Hopefully you all got a chance to get a little something to eat, a little bite to eat. I did ask, the guy from Buildings and Grounds came over and said that he kicked up the air conditioner for us, so hopefully that starts working anytime soon. So sorry about that. We had asked them to kind of make the room as cool as possible, and I guess they said it wasn't in the budget, so no, I'm just joking. You physical people laugh. Unfortunately not. So, so this morning, just everybody, how many of you were here or how many of you were not here this morning? Is there anybody that wasn't here this morning? Okay. So, so this morning, hopefully you guys felt like that was valuable to you. I hope that you guys got some information out of that. And this afternoon, just to kind of recap what we're going to go over, in just a minute, I'll introduce Mr. Perez from NVPers, and he's going to talk to you guys a little bit about your PERS benefit journey into and throughout retirement. And then also, after he's done, we'll try and take a little quick break, and you guys can, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the basics of estate planning and preservation. And then we're going to have our folks from Public Employee Benefits come up, and they have a presentation called Aging into Healthcare that I found was really, really valuable in helping you understand what you need to do when you get close to that, and especially if you have, if you qualify for retiree health benefits. So, and then with that, we also have our friends from, I believe, we'll see if SMP is here. Is someone from Senior Medicare Control or Medicare Patrol here by chance, SMP? Not yet, but maybe they'll show up, and we'll just have them come up and give you kind of a little bit on what their program is all about and how it can help you. And then our folks from Nevada Health Link will be here as well. And then we're going to stick around a little bit to answer questions for you individually, one-on-one. And the VOIA folks will stay here. The folks from Public Employee Benefits will stay here. And we should be good to go, okay? So I'd like to introduce Mr. Maurice Perez. Maurice serves as one of the outreach, the PERS counselors over at Nevada PERS. And we always love to have PERS come in and give a presentation at all of our events, just because it plays such a vital role in your retirement and your financial wellness outlook, right? So Maurice is going to talk to you a little bit about how PERS works and some things you need to think about as you go into retirement and you start planning for that and start collecting on this benefit. So Mr. Maurice Perez, here's the clicker here. You can use that.
Can you guys hear me all right? Everybody hear me? Okay, good. No problem. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. All right. I hope everyone had a great lunch. Again, my name is Maurice, and I'm a retirement counselor with PERS. I've been with PERS for about 12 and a half years. So I got a lot longer to go than most of you probably do. But in the process, I've been able to learn a lot about retirement, and I hope to give you all some good information today and help you prepare for your retirement. All right. So I'll just jump right into it right now. I hope everybody got a handout for you coming in right now. Just please try to grab a handout, throw it over here, and we'll go ahead and get started, all right?
If you don't have a handout, raise your hand. Raise your hand and keep them up. Over here, raise your hand so we can see you.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so today's topics, all right, what we'll be talking about is the service retirement. Okay, we'll be talking about eligibility, the calculation, optional payment plans, and the beneficiary selection. Okay, early retirement and post-retirement increases, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, other retirement benefits, so there is two other ones we will talk about. Purchase of service programs and also the repayment programs that we offer. We'll be talking about applying for your benefits, how you do that, and receiving that payment. Okay, reemployment after retirement, which is pretty common. All right, avoiding common mistakes. This is definitely one good way to do it. Come here and get informed, okay? Social Security and PERS, so the relation between the two. Retirement income sources, so other ones besides your PERS benefit. and then we'll talk about the website briefly too as well, okay? All right, so eligibility. Let's go ahead and talk about eligibility for a little bit, all right? Most of you probably know, across the board, it's 5 years to become vested in the system, all right? 10 years at age 60 for members hired prior to January 1st of 2010. 10 years at age 62 if you were hired after 2010. It remained the same for our members hired after July 1 of 2015. Now, the eligibility has changed throughout the years, and what eligibility is basically the years of service and age required to not receive a reduction on your benefit, okay? 30 years at any age, as you see, for members hired prior to January 1 of 2010, okay? 30 years at any age as well for members hired after January 1st of 2010, and 33.3 years it takes for members to reach full eligibility to retire at any age if you were hired after January 1 of 2010. So it has changed a couple times throughout the year, so it's generally not going to be the same for everybody, all right?
2015, you said 2010.
2015, that's right. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, 2015.
I can't imagine there's too many of you in the room that were hired after 2015. So.
Probably not. I just want to make sure we clarify that in case you know anyone who was hired after that date. You could probably pass that piece of information on to them. Okay, so eligibility for police fire members is a little different. Our police fire members will actually reach that full eligibility at an earlier age generally because they do have a higher contribution rate. Okay, so police fire members will be at the 5 years as well for 65. That's again across the board for everyone. 10 years at age 55, you'll see a change at 10 years at 60 for members hired after 2010. And it remained the same for our members who were hired July 1, post July 1, 2015. Okay, the 20 years is a big one for them. At 20 years, they can generally retire at age 50. Okay, and that's for at any point. Okay, the only thing that changed for our police fire members, and this is for our regular members as well, post 2015, if you were enrolled in the system, didn't have any prior service to that, you're not able to purchase towards your eligibility. Okay, eligibility basically, if you had 25 years, for example, and wanted to buy 5, you can no longer retire with the combination of the purchase time and the work time. That's what that means. All right, any questions on eligibility at all? Yes, sir. Okay, the question was, is this for regular members and police fire members as far as purchasing time towards eligibility? The answer is that's for both, for police fire and regular. You're welcome. Yes. The question is, if you were to leave the system and have existing service and come back, do you come back with the new policies or the old policies? Well, basically, if you have service in the system prior to any of these changes and you never withdrew it, then you're under the old policies. From the starting point of which you first enrolled in the system, correct. That is correct. The question is, if you withdraw money from the system, your employee contributions, and then pay it back, will you be under the old policies? Yes, you will restore your service credit and be under the old policies. Any other questions? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am. When were you hired? When were you hired? When were you enrolled in the system? Were you enrolled prior to 2010? Okay. Okay. Question is, if you have 10 years and the age of 60 and you were enrolled prior to 2010, if you can retire fully with no reductions? The answer is yes, you can. Yes, the percentage, however, is at what you have earned. So if you're at 15 years, it's at the 15 years, not at the full 75%, which is achieved right around 28 and a half years on average. But to answer your question, yes. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on here to benefit calculation factors. Okay, there's three different factors that we use. There's three different factors that we use to basically find out what you're going to be drawing, okay? The service credit is one of them. Now, what is service credit? You're basically earning credit each day that you're in the system, okay? Day, months, and years, all right? So a full credit is what builds your percentage, all right? But it doesn't always have to be a full credit. You're earning it each day, so it's prorated. All right, I hear a lot of members say, well, when is my anniversary date? Sometimes that's not so important unless you're reaching an eligibility. Okay, so basically each day in the system, you're building that credit up. The average compensation, that's the other factor we use, one of the others, and that is your highest 36 months of salary. Okay, so it's the highest. I hear a lot of people say, well, is it the last 3 years of service? No, it doesn't necessarily have to be the last 3. It's wherever the highest 36 consecutive months fall. If you happen to take a dip in salary, the system will lock it for you. Okay, so that always works in your favor. Yes. Okay, so the question is basically if between the two contribution plans we have, which is the employer paid and the employer paid only plan, what salary do we go based off of? Well, it's really going to be the same at the end of the day, because what we do is in the employer paid plan, your salary is actually reduced. Okay, so your gross salary is reduced. It looks like you're making less than what somebody who is employer paid is. But what's happening is the employer is contributing that money prior to it hitting your check. Well, what we do when you retire is we do what's called factoring of that salary. So what we do is we include that contribution essentially and factor up your salary so it's going to be exactly the same. All right? Yes. Well, basically, if you want to have it at that, the question is if you retire and you're currently in your high 36 consecutive months of salary and you want to have it factor at that new salary all 36 months, yes, you would have to clear at least 3 years to be at that new salary. Okay, the question is basically what I'm understanding is if that period of 7 months does not fall in those 36 months and it's been basically not included in there, the system is not going to take anything that's less. It always locks at the highest 36. It's not going to take salary that's any less than what we currently have on file. The question that you're asking is something that might be something that it's not really general. It might be more to your account, and you might need to talk to your payroll about that. That's really, which if you did have administered leave, it should be covered, yes. And if that should be reported as normal pay would. If you were working, it should still be reported in the same manner and included in your high 36.
So if I can, if I can interject on that, sometimes, and I've seen this happen, where sometimes just because you're on FMLA and you're receiving salary, sometimes they're not paying into PERS for you. So you do want to double check to make sure that they took that contribution out. You would not get the service credit unless you paid into it, regardless of whether you're being paid or not. So sometimes I have seen this where people that go under FMLA, they give you your salary, right? But they don't take any of the deductions out that you would normally have taken out. So first of all, verify that. The second thing you need to do, I think, Maurice, is probably make an appointment with some of the folks, some of the counselors at PERS, and just go in and talk to them about that and have them explain it to you exactly what you're looking at. What you need to understand is that the rolling 36 months that you have, it could be anywhere in your whole entire career, right? So they take all the service credit time that you have put in, that you have, and they look at the highest 36 consecutive months. If it just so happens that you're at the highest grade you've ever been in your career, then that might be the highest 36-month grade. But I can tell you there's probably people in this room, as well as people that I see every day, that really the highest 36 months, rolling 36 months continuous, are actually prior to like 2010, when, before we got, all of our merit step increases taken away and all that stuff, and now that, thank goodness, they've all come back. But there are some people that fall into that realm. So everybody's unique, right? And you have to look at your situation directly. You can't look at somebody else's. And a lot of people think, oh, it's always the last 36 months that you work. Not the case. Okay?
So the question is, if the contributions to the system were not made by the employer during that time of administered leave, can she basically pay for that time to be included? No, the answer is no. Yes. It's going to take an average. So basically, it's going to be factoring. It's going to be, okay, so if you don't necessarily have to be at that new salary for 36 months to make it go up. Basically, the system is going to drop off the previous months and continue grabbing the months that are higher. At some point, if the salary dips, it locks. The system locks it and it will not accept any more salary. If all of a sudden, 3 years down the road, it starts coming in at a higher rate, it has to be for 3 more years. It is an average, that is correct. The average is different for everybody. It just depends on your salary. Yes. Okay, let's move on to the final factor here is the age, okay? The age is basically going to determine that as far as what the reduction would be. When you retire, basically everything's based off of age factors is what we call it. And we'll go over that a little bit on the next slide here, okay? Next couple slides, I should say. Okay, so the benefit formula is the same for everybody, pretty much. What we're going to do here is go over some of the differences as far as when members were enrolled in the system, okay? In this example here, this is benefit formula for members enrolled on or after July 1 of 2015, okay? So in the sample calculation, this member has 20 years of service credit, a $3,000 average compensation, okay? So this regular member, after 20 years, at 2.25% each year is going to be at 45%. okay? 45% of the $3,000 will give this member $1,350, and that's what's called the service retirement allowance. That's what this member will earn under option 1, gross monthly benefit. Okay, for police fire members, they are at 2.5%. Again, the contribution rate is higher, so they do have a higher multiplier there. They will be at 50% after the 20 years, and they will, at 50%, they will have $1,500 service retirement allowance. Okay? So again, let's note this is for members hired prior to after July 1 of 2015. Thank you, Rob. Okay, so we'll go with a benefit formula for members enrolled on or after January 1, 2015. Okay, so this member has 20 years, as you can see, but they are at 2.5%. Okay, same with police fire members. They are at 2.5% in this area here. Okay, we're at $1,500 here for the service retirement allowance. Okay, and the final one here, is enrolled prior to January 1, 2010. So most of you here are probably enrolled prior to January 1, 2010. I'm gonna just take a guess and say most of you are. So it's a little different here. What we have is 20 years again, but as you see, we have a mixed bag here. We have 2.5% and 2.67%. Well, the 2.5% is for years earned prior to July of 2001, July 1 of 2001. They were only worth 2.5% at that point. Okay, then they went up to 2.67%. All right, so in this example, this member earned 10 years prior to 2001 and the other 10 years post July 1, 2001. So they have 10 and 10, they're at 51.7%. Okay, if you were hired prior to 2010, your years are still worth 2.67%. Okay, so this member is at 1551 service retirement allowance. Yes, yes, ma'am. The question is if the maximum is 75% service time multiplier. Yes, it is, unless you were hired prior to July 1 of 1985. You would be eligible for 90% at that point. Not too many of those left, but I have retired and helped a couple people retire that are at that 90%. So that's pretty nice. The service retirement allowance is a monthly allowance. It's a gross monthly allowance. Gross, correct. The question is does it remain constant if you were hired prior to 2010 at 2.67%? The answer is yes, it remains, you are still at 2.67%. All right, any other questions on the benefit formula? Yes. Yes, that is a great question. So the question is, if you are buying time and you have 2.5% years and 2.67%, what is it being bought at? The answer is it's being bought at the rate that you're at the time you buy it. So if you buy it and it's at 267, it's 267. Okay, let's go ahead and move on here to retirement options. Okay, so we do have, generally we have 7 options usually that could be available to you when you retire. Okay, we have 3 displayed here. These are the 3 most common options that are selected by our retirees, and that's why we are going to go over these 3 briefly. Okay, so we're going to use that 1551 figure again, the service retirement allowance of 1551. All right, in this example, we have a 60-year-old retiree and a 52-year-old beneficiary. Okay, again, we did talk about that third factor being the age. Well, this is where the age plays in, okay? Basically what the system does is it takes life expectancy, like a life insurance policy, and it's an actuarial table, and it reduces the amount that you would be receiving if you decide to have a beneficiary. Okay, and that's all based on the age of both the retiree and the beneficiary. All right, so in option 1, $1,551 is going to be paid to the retiree. Okay, 0 would be paid over to the beneficiary. So they're receiving the full amount. Once they pass away, the benefit stops, and you cannot change that option. That's called an unmodified option. You are locked in that option. Options 2 and 3 do allow a beneficiary to continue receiving the benefit. Okay, so if the retiree passes away under option 2, the beneficiary would be receiving $1,287. The retiree receives a reduced amount of $1,287 as well. Okay? Under option 3, the retiree is not going to take quite as big of a reduction. It's at $1,406. The beneficiary receives $703, exactly half of that amount. The reason why is because the benefit to the beneficiary is not quite as great. It's only half. So that would be a good option for maybe one of our members who already has an existing strong life insurance policy and just wants to put a supplement on that. That might be a good option for them. Or maybe both of them are members in the system. I've seen it where they maybe go option 3 as well because of that reason. Okay, so that's why we do have different options depending on our member's situation at the time of retirement. Now, you do not elect an option until you retire. That's another common misconception. People believe that, okay, well, what option am I under? You're not under an option until you actually fill out the application and retire. That's when you elect.
The important thing to remember here, a lot of people call our office on that as well. And they'll say, well, I already selected that I want my wife or my husband to receive my pension if I was to die while I'm working, right? Completely different. What we're talking about here are distribution options, right? So this is what you're going to declare as when you go to declare your distribution option and start receiving your benefit. Option number 1 is always an unmodified benefit, right? You're taking 100% of whatever the unmodified benefit amount is. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm seeing some deer in the headlights look from me looking at you guys, so I just want to clarify that with everybody.
If the benefit, okay, the question is if the retiree is 60 and the beneficiary is 60. Yes, that figure is going to change. More than likely that figure is not going to, the reduction is not going to be as great. Generally, that's the way the actuarial table works. Yes? If the beneficiary, the question is if the beneficiary predeceases the retiree, what happens to that option and to the amount? Well, what we do is we will revert the retiree back to option number 1, and they will start collecting the full amount that they were initially entitled to. Yes, definitely. There is some other things to go over on the options here that I will go over with you as well briefly. The beneficiary for option 1 in the asterisk for a police fire member, what that means is that is the police fire spouse option. They are entitled to receive the full amount, $1,551, and leave exactly half of that amount to their spouse or registered domestic partner. Yes? If you're in option 1, then you don't have a beneficiary. You're collecting the full amount payable to you from the very beginning. Well, there is no reduction. Okay, the question is if a police fireman selects option 1 and the spouse passes away, what do we do at that point? Well, the police fireman is not receiving, or a woman is not receiving any type of reduction. So the option amount remains the same. You cannot name another beneficiary under any circumstance. Can you ever change the beneficiary? Right? If the police fireman or woman were to remarry, we cannot change that option, and they cannot change the beneficiary. So the question is, if we have two public employees collecting a benefit under, let's say, option 2, and one of them passes away and starts collecting their owner account and also a beneficiary account. Yes, they basically will collect both. They're two separate pensions, one a beneficiary and one an owner. All right, so we got some other beneficiary selection things to note here, okay? So any person can be your beneficiary, anybody you'd like. It doesn't have to be a spouse, it doesn't have to be a family member, it can be anybody you'd like, okay? It just cannot be a trust fund or a charitable organization. Reason why is we have to base it on somebody's life expectancy, okay? The spouse or registered domestic partner must agree to the option that you select. Okay, so during the application process, if you are married or have a registered domestic partner, you will both need to be present to sign off on the option selection. Okay, if the beneficiary is more than 10 years younger and is not your spouse or registered domestic partner, federal law prohibits paying under options 2 and 4. Now, if you guys remember, option 2 is the full amount payable to the beneficiary. Option 4 that we did not really talk about is another option that is the full amount but does not start until the age of 60, until the beneficiary reaches 60. Those two options by federal law are not available. They would have to go under 3 or 5, which is only half of the amount payable. So for example, if you have a child, more than likely they're only going to be eligible for 3 and 5. So, does that make sense? Okay, great. All right, let's move on here to early retirement. Okay, so we do have some members that do retire early. Commonly, if a member is moving out of state or has been offered a new job maybe in the private sector, they might leave at, for example, age 58, which is what we have here. If they leave at age 58 or whenever it may be, they can draw their benefit with a reduction, okay? So it's basically a 4% reduction each full year if you were hired prior to January 1 of 2010. It's a 6% reduction if you were hired after January 1, 2010. Okay, so if, say this member is 58, as we got here, they're retiring 2 years early from age 60, they're going to be, a reduction of 8% is going to be applied to the account. Okay? So we take that 1551 figure again, and we're taking away $124. So now they're going to be drawing 1427. That is the new service retirement allowance. Now that benefit is payable for a lifetime again, but it does not go up to 1551 once they reach full eligibility. It's a permanent reduction. Okay? And these are prorated reductions as well. Okay, if say you're going to be 59 in 1 month, we're not going to penalize you 8%. Okay, it's all prorated, so you won't get that full hit. All right, and I've seen a lot of people do this and make it work to their advantage. You know, I've seen people leave the state and draw a little early and say, hey, you know, I'm good with the reduction. I'll draw and I'll work in another state, and that's perfectly fine. All right. Do you guys have a question over here? Okay, so the post-retirement increases are still the same. Yeah, exactly, yeah, you're going to reach those increases 2 years earlier. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Oh, okay, so the question is, you purchased time when it was at 2.5%. And the service credit was worth 2.5%, and you want to know if you can increase that to the 2.67% rate. Okay. Okay, so you're talking about purchasing time, so like buying another year at that current average salary. Okay, no, basically, no, you wouldn't be able to do that. No. That's, that's a good question. That's correct. Yeah, it's based on your age, which we'll actually talk about that here in just a moment. It is based on your age and your salary at the time you entered the agreement to purchase that time. So it is locked at that rate. Yes. Yes, we'll actually talk about purchasing time here in the next couple slides, but yes, there is a limit to that. We'll talk about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the annual post-retirement increases. So as this gentleman here mentioned, you will get increases after 3 full years of being retired. Okay, so going into your 4th year, you'll start getting a 2% increase. And that's generally going to be the month following the date that you retired is when those increases will be. So the increases are going to be different for everybody as far as when you start receiving them and when you receive them. Okay, so as we see here in the 4th, 5th, and 6th year, you start getting 2% increases, and then 3% and so on. It works right down the scale there, okay? It's also dependent on when you were enrolled in the system. As you can see, if you're enrolled prior to 2010, you're eligible for a maximum of 5% at 15 plus, and then 4% if you were hired after 2010, and 3% if you were hired after July 1 of 2015. So it does depend when you were hired. This does as well. Okay, now these increases here are the max that you can receive during these years, okay? It is the maximum. However, it can be capped by the Consumer Price Index. Now, what that means is generally if you retire and inflation, which is what this is driven off of, is very high and it continues to be very high and grow, then you're more than likely going to continue to receive these increases at the scheduled rate. If inflation slows down or remains stagnant, then you're going to probably at some point, you're going to exceed that amount that you were to be given, say 4%. After all those increases you were given, you're going to overpace the inflation rate. So then the Consumer Price Index will cap it. You'll still get an increase. I've never seen anybody not get an increase, but it's going to be at a different rate. It'd probably be, for example, instead of a 5%, you might only get a 2% or a 3%, for example. But it's going to be at a capped rate at that point. And if it is ever capped, it can go back up again. I mean, every year they review this. So it is based on, I believe, a rolling average over the last 3 years is what they look at. I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please? Okay, how is the public made aware if there's a cap on the increase? Well, basically, it's different for everybody, so that's not something that we release to the public. Now, you can find those figures as far as what inflation is and where it's at with the Consumer Price Index. But how it's applied to the account is going to be different for everybody because everyone generally has retired at a different time, and the inflation was different at that point. And so it's not going to be something that's general for everybody. It's going to be different. Unfortunately, the question is do we know, how far in advance do we know when this cap is going to take place? Well, generally, we don't know too far ahead because it's all based on an average of the past 3 years, so they look at it almost at a month-to-month basis. And that's not reported to us by the CPI until that member is due that increase. It could change on a month-to-month basis, exactly, so there's not too much of notice there, unfortunately. Yes, the question is if these increases are annual, and yes, they are. Each year, they're going to be compounding on top of what your gross benefit was. Correct. So this is really nice. Just make sure you know this is really good to plan with and see what your retirement could possibly be and end up being down the road, but just always keep in mind that cap could take place. Okay. All right, so other retirement benefits, we'll talk briefly about these. We have 2 other benefits. So we have a total of 3 benefits. The other 2 are disability and a survivor benefits. Okay, so a disability retirement, you have to have a minimum of 5 years to be eligible for a disability retirement. So basically, you have to be invested in the system. You have to be totally unable to perform your current job or a comparable job due to a permanent or physical condition. Okay? The application must be submitted before termination of employment. Okay, so that one's really important. You don't want to, if you or someone you know is struggling with a disability, you don't want to leave that position without first talking to your employer and letting them know that you're going to be possibly applying for a disability. They'll be able to work with you and hopefully put you on some sort of administered leave while you're going through this process. Because if you file and you have separated employment, you will not be eligible. So that one's probably the most important one out of all of this. That's correct. The benefit is calculated the same as a service retirement, okay? So everything we just went over, the formula, everything, the retirement options, all of that is the same. The only difference is that you are not going to be penalized. For example, if you're 58 and your full eligibility is 60, we're not going to take that reduction of 8. You're not going to take that reduction of 8%. Okay? You will get the full amount that you were entitled to at that point. Okay? Board approval required before any reemployment. So that's the one thing about going under a disability is that there does have to be reemployment applications filed in order to allow you to reemploy again, and that has to be reviewed by our board. Okay, for each position that you might be taking on once you retire under a disability. All right. Survivor benefits. Okay, survivor benefits. Now this is where sometimes our members get a little confused, and I can understand why. Survivor benefits are for members while you are working. Okay, that's for us while we are an active member in the system or possibly inactive. Okay, but not retired. All right, you haven't selected an option yet. So there's got to be a way we can pay these benefits if you were to pass away prior to that point. Those are called survivor benefits. All right. To be eligible for survivor benefits, you have to have at least 2 years of service in the system. Okay? Survivors include, first, the spouse and registered domestic partner. So by default, they are the primary beneficiaries. Okay? Children under the age of 18 at the time of death. Okay? So basically, dependent children, they can receive a benefit up to the age of 18 or 23. Okay, depending if they go to school, they can receive a benefit up to the age of 23. Okay, survivor, beneficiary, and additional payees. Okay, so what that is basically you can have multiple beneficiaries. Now, how many of you have filled out the survivor beneficiary designation form? Let me see. Yeah, I want to see most of you raise your hands because yes, that's a great point there. Basically, the question is the benefit, it's based off of the person who has the longer life expectancy. In this example that you're giving me, it sounds like you have named the youngest, your granddaughter, as the survivor. Okay, the additional payees are receiving in addition to the survivor based on percentages that you can list as long as the survivor is alive. Once the survivor passes away, the benefits stop being paid to the additional payees. Okay, so it's really important to name who that survivor is. Generally, you want to name the younger individual or someone who you think is going to have the longer life expectancy.
So to give you an example, my wife and I decided to have children later on in life again. My wife got to be about 38 years old and said, I want to have a baby, and so we had 3. And so, we, every year that we had a new child, I would go in and change my survivor beneficiary form to make that new child my surviving benefactor, right? So that if something was to happen to me, God forbid that would happen, my kids are going to be able to receive that benefit, and it's going to be based on the youngest child's life expectancy. If you list your wife or your husband as that surviving benefit factor, which a lot of people do, then it's going to be based on their life expectancy. And both of you get in a car accident or get hit by a Mack truck, God forbid that would ever happen, then your kids aren't going to receive anything potentially. So it's always good to review that, just like you review your beneficiary information on your life insurance policy. You should on your deferred comp plan. You should also review your beneficiary information or your surviving beneficiary information on your retirement plan. And you can look at all that stuff online, right? Can't you?
Yes, that's correct, Rob. You can actually view that information online. If you set up an account, you can view who your survivors are. If you have not set up an account or you're not quite clear on that, you can always call us. Okay, you can always contact us, and we can tell you over the phone who you have listed there. Okay, this form is very, very crucial to have on file, just because unfortunately we have seen where there has been tragedies and these have not been filed correctly. Okay, or maybe out of date, and so we really want to make sure. I can't stress enough to make sure these are filed. There is a form included in that handout at the very back, so if you want to take a look at that, and if you guys have any questions, you guys can always call us and we can go over that form with you. There's really a lot of different ways to fill it out, but please make sure you do so. Yes. Yes, basically the question is if you have a form filled out with deferred comp or any other supplemental life insurance policy, and you do not have one filled out with PERS, it's not going to transfer over. You have to have these forms filled out with each individual organization, okay? So again, if you're not sure, just call us. It's really, really simple. We'll be able to let you know what you have filed there.
And with your deferred comp plan, you can go right on, log onto your account, if you have a user account set up, an online user account, and you can verify who your beneficiaries are right online. Or you can call the wonderful folks over at Voya Financial, and they could tell you as well, okay?
Okay, let's move on to increasing service credit. Okay, so increasing service credit. All right, so we talked about working, right? That's obviously one way to increase your service credit. All right, thank you. All right, so a purchase of service program. Okay, so we talked about buying time. You can buy up to, I think I had a question of what is the max amount you can purchase. Well, the answer is 5 years, okay? 5 years is the max that you can purchase, all right? You can purchase in day, month, or year increments, so you don't have to necessarily purchase a full year. Say you're at 29 and a half years and you just want to buy 6 months and get out at 30 and out. That's fine. You can purchase exactly what it takes, all right? The reason I bring that example up too is that's usually the most common reason as to why our members will purchase time, is to reach an eligibility a little sooner, basically retire sooner. Okay. Generally, it's better to buy when you're earlier in your career, okay? At an earlier point. Reason why is because it's based on your age and your salary. So it's basically as you age, it's going to go up. Your salary is probably going to go up too as you age. Generally, in your professional career, it's going to go up. So you want to buy sooner rather than later. Now, sometimes that's not always the case. If it does work on a scale. So if you can reach a peak at that rate of about 50, I think for members 56 or 57, it peaks out for your age. And then it starts dipping a little bit, okay, just a little bit. So if you're at that point, you might want to check with us, and we can tell you if it's, going to be advantageous to purchase now or maybe wait until your next birthday, okay? All right, so repayment of a refund. All right, now I think I had a question about that earlier too. So let's say you were in the system as, I'm going to use an example, as a student worker at some point, right? Maybe way early in your professional career. You worked for a year or two, and then you ended up going off to college and you withdrew that money, okay? Let's say you withdrew a year or two. Then all of a sudden you find yourself back in Nevada and you're with a public employer again. You can choose to restore that time, okay? If you restore that time, not only are you buying at a much more cost-effective rate, but you're also restoring your original enrollment date, which will put you under the older policies, okay? So you're restoring your enrollment as well by doing that. Now, I've seen this one go missed a lot. Some people don't even know that they're eligible for a repayment. If you think maybe that might be your case, again, just call us. We can check for you. We can do a service credit audit and see what you're eligible for and get that information out to you. Okay, it's again much more cost effective than purchasing at today's rate. Okay. Payment methods. All right, so there's 3 different methods to purchase and restore time. A lump sum payment, that's a personal cashier's check. Installments up to 10 years with an 8% interest included. So that could get quite expensive, but I've seen if you lock that at a pretty good rate, it might work out for you, okay? 10 years is the max that you can basically pay that time off, and it's the max amount of time that we give you to pay it. You can set it up for a year or 2 or any time you'd like to pay that time off, okay? The final way is a rollover. Okay, so a rollover purchase would be, say, for example, from a 401k, from Voya. We do a ton of rollovers from Voya. So if you have a plan with them, and you can do that as many times as you'd like. That transaction does not have to be only once a year or once in a lifetime. You can do that as many times as you'd like and purchase as much time as you'd like, okay? It's tax deferred, okay, so you're not going to be penalized on that money. It rolls right into our system, which is a qualified plan. All right. Yes, go ahead. Sure. So the question is basically if you have purchase time, for example, 2 years, and you wanted to maybe go 28, purchase 2 and retire at 30, but you end up working the full 30, can you get those 2 years back? When you take a refund from the system of any sort, which that would be a refund, in most cases you're canceling all of your service credit in doing that. The system is not set up to withdraw money from at any given time and then put money back in. It's really set up for a benefit. So if you withdraw that money, and this is all based on the contract that you sign at that time, but generally it's going to cancel all of your service credit. So the answer is no. Generally no, yes.
And we have gotten that question quite a bit in our office, and here again, that's kind of one of the pitfalls of purchasing service credit is you better make sure that you're going to use it right before you purchase. I know a lot of folks that are starting out, they vest and they're like, man, everyone says I gotta purchase 5 years right off the bat, right? That's a lot of time there, and my suggestion would be that you get with us, get with the folks from Voya, our contracted record keeper, and they can help you run scenarios that are side-by-side scenarios to illustrate to you how much time you're gonna have to collect that benefit before you even break even at a real small interest rate if you were to just leave it in your deferred comp. And sometimes that's the factor that people look at and go, well, it looks to me like maybe it's better that I forego purchasing service credit. I'm that person, right? If I was to purchase service credit, it's going to cost me a lot more than what I'm making, and just kind of as a low average in my deferred comp. I would have to collect the benefit for like 39 years before I break even, right? So it's probably more advantageous to me to be able to just continue to manage that in my deferred comp plan versus buying the service credit. It sounds real great that you're going to get an increase in benefit, but when you see what that increase is and you factor that in, sometimes it's not worth it. So everybody's different, everybody's unique. Get with the folks from Voya, get with these guys as well. They can help you understand what that is. That sounds to me like you've already done it, so I'm so sorry. Well, we all in the state of Nevada appreciate your service. Right, it's tough. It's very tough. You got it. You got it.
Yeah, no, Rob, that's a great point. That's one thing I like doing for our members when I meet with them is if they want to purchase time, they're not really purchasing necessarily towards an eligibility, but they just want to maybe take their money from, for example, one of the other companies and roll it in and say, you know what, I want to buy some time, and I feel it's a little more secure there. Well, I like running the numbers and seeing, well, let's see what that investment is. Let's see how long it's going to take you to get that investment back. Because the thing is that on average, from what I see, it takes anywhere from, I'd say on average from 12 to 15 years in that area to recuperate your investment. So it could work out for you. It's really a roll of the dice. You know, when you retire, no one has that crystal ball. We don't know. But if you end up living to be 100 years old and you retired at 50, well, then you might have really made out. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, and in your case, you know, here you are a young lady that is obviously, you know, not at an age where you still can work quite a few years, and you've noticed, right? Your biggest expense in retirement is probably going to be your health care, especially when you got young children at home still. We're in the same boat. I would never even fathom retire. My wife wouldn't let me retire, but yeah, I wouldn't even fathom it, right? And I was faced with that in my career. Coming to work for the state is a second career for me in a sense. So, and I was only 43 when I made that choice, right? So, we're both in kind of a similar situation. So, I actually learned from someone like you, unfortunately. I didn't make that mistake. So, anyway, sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, when you purchase time, you have money that has been taxed already if it's not a rollover. Okay, if it's a rollover, then that's tax-deferred money. When you retire, just like employee contributions, you've already paid taxes on it, and that portion cannot be taxed. It's a non-taxable amount. It is paid back out to you. It is noted on your 1099 that you receive each year after you retire what portion of that was paid out to you has been taxed already. So it's you won't pay taxes on it. All right. One more thing on the purchasing here, or two more, I should say. I'll go this briefly because I think we might be running out of time here. Allow ample processing time. What that means is basically, I'll break this down quickly. Give yourself at least 30 days prior to retiring if you're going to want to purchase time. At least 30 days, call us and request an agreement, okay? Because especially rollovers, they do take quite a while to complete because of the third party that we have. We have 3 parties involved, so please make sure you call us on that and get that going. The last thing there on purchasing is for our military members, anybody who served in the military, they are eligible for an additional 3 years of service. I actually met with a gentleman the other day, and he came in and he was buying an additional 3 years he was eligible for. So this gentleman's going to have 8 years of service purchase, so he's going to be able to retire much sooner than most of us. And I think that's a great thing. That's a great benefit for our military members. If it's not you, or maybe if it's somebody you know, spread the word, because a lot of people do not use this benefit because they do not know about it. It's not one of those that we put out there quite as much as some of the other ones, okay? So just something to keep in mind there. All right, so application, the application process, all right? Most of you are probably wondering, okay, when can I file my application? When should I start looking at getting all my paperwork into you? That's a very common question. Well, the earliest you can file is up to 6 months in advance, okay, to your retirement date. I recommend calling us and getting an estimate, a benefit estimate, about a year prior to your retiring. That way you can go ahead and look at the figures and make sure that everything is as planned for you, okay?
I all learned about that this morning, right? It's in my checklist.
So yeah, 6 months is the earliest, and right up to your last day of employment is when you could file that application, and we can make it effective basically the next day, all right? My general rule is that if you're in that 6 month window, and you know what your option is going to be, and you know what your last day of work is going to be, then you should file your application in that 6 months. There's no right or wrong way to do it, just within that window, all right? The payment option selection, now again, we talked about the beneficiary. You have to know what that option is going to be and kind of have that already figured out by the time you file that app. It requires a notarized signature by both the member and the spouse or registered domestic partner, okay? So we do have notaries in our office. If you guys are thinking of filing your application at some point in the near future and you're in this area, you're always welcome to come into our office and we can notarize it for you, or you can always get that done somewhere else. Okay, the direct deposit form, we're making that mandatory now, okay? You do have to have a direct deposit. That form is included in your account, but I'm sure most of you are not going to have a problem with that. I would say about, 99% of people are getting their check directly deposited anyways, okay? The federal income tax withholding certificate, that's a form that's included in the application as well. We did talk about your service retirement allowance is a gross figure, okay? So you will be paying federal taxes on your account. All right, and just like you do now, you control what that amount will be. All right, health insurance, contact your employer on the health insurance. Okay, we don't handle any medical insurance at PERS. All right, our only involvement really is deducting that out of your check for your convenience. We deduct it, that's really our only involvement, is just deducting it out of your check for your convenience. All right. Yes, there is other deductions. The common ones you will see on your check is your taxes and your medical insurance, okay? If you wish, you can have life insurance policies and other ones such as maybe AFLAC or any of those other ones. Some of those qualify as well. Or the life insurance policies as well. So. Yeah. Yes, we don't do that, no. All right, and the last one there is the proof of birth and name change documents, okay? So for the most part, this is pretty established, very simple for most of our members, okay? All you got to do is file usually a driver's license if you've been in the system for more than 10 years and have not had a name change. If you've had a name change, then we need documents showing how you became who you are at this point. So divorce, marriage certificate, anything like that. The question is for a life insurance policy, once you retire, does that policy remain intact or is it altered or changed in any way? That's really a better question for the life insurance policy directly. We do our only involvement is deducting it and sending that payment to the life insurance policy. They don't give us any details.
So I can answer that for you. So are there any people from DHRM in here? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not screwing up here. If I am, make sure you let me know. But that's who you should check with, is DHRM or Central Payroll or Public Employee Benefits. Could actually through standard. Amy, do you want to come up? And we are over time, so.
Hi again, I'm Amy. So if you are a state active employee and you are enrolled in PEB benefits, you do have a life insurance that's included. It's in the amount of $25,000 currently. Once you retire, that life insurance, as long as you continue your health insurance with PEB, drops $12,500, and it is subject to change every year. So for, at least for the next year, it will be $12,500 for the retirees.
And you do
State
have to set up that
retirees.
deduction with PERS if you're gonna do it, or.
PEB
or-
actually takes
PEB.
care of that when they enroll. If you do retiree coverage with PEB, we send everything to PERS and do the deductions and everything
Perfect.
on our side. You guys don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I do, I know that you can elect to pay it out of your own, like, checking account and stuff too, can't you?
Not if you're enrolled
Okay,
in benefits.
all right,
as
never
far as I
mind,
know.
don't pay attention to me on that.
Yeah, well, the basic life insurance is an included benefit, so you're not even paying a premium for
Yeah, and
that.
it
If
just
it's
becomes a
voluntary,
final
it's
expense,
different. Yeah.
really becomes a final expense policy for you at that
Yeah.
time. Steve, in the back?
No, it's gonna continue to be $12,500 for the next year. Yeah.
See,
yes.
awesome enhancement, isn't that great?
Yes. The question was, when you turn 65, does anything happen to it? If you're still enrolled in coverage and you continue following PEB plan rules, the life insurance will stay in place. It does not change based on
Genealogy.
age. And this is all the basic life insurance. If you have voluntary, that's completely separate.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That would be a question for Maurice.
So like long-term care, disability insurance,
Voluntary life.
say it again?
Voluntary life
Voluntary
insurance.
life, those things, can they elect to have those deducted from their, if they want to continue on with those in retirement, can they elect to have those taken out of their PERS check?
Most of those vendors do qualify, yes. Life insurance policies through Standard Life and all those, they do come out of our retirees' checks. Yes.
Anyone else have any questions for me? Okay, the life insurance then. Stay enrolled in coverage. Yeah, that's it.
And
There's
that-
one question,
And
sir?
you did have to do that before
Yeah,
May
May 31st was the end of open enrollment for us. You have a question for Maurice? Okay, perfect. I'm gonna go run.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, I kind of had trouble hearing you there. So it sounds like your question was about the federal taxes if, okay, so the question is, number one, are you taxed on the full amount? And the second part of that question is, can you designate basically what amount you want to have deducted? The answer is yes to both of those. So basically, the only portion that you won't be paying taxes on is any employee contributions that are paid out to you. That money has already been taxed by your employer. So you wouldn't be paying taxes on that amount. Okay, all right, is that better? So basically, there is a small amount that you would not be paying taxes on, but you are paying taxes monthly on the, basically you're paying it on the full amount, okay? And you control what that's going to be. There's basically three main options that you can select from when you retire. You can elect to have zero withheld, so if you have another arrangement on paying your taxes, that's fine. The second option is going to be based on the IRS tax table, so you can elect to go, for example, married in 1 or married in 0, and we'll withhold the amount based on, just like your W-4, exactly. And then the final option is, say some people say they want to do 15%, for example, so you can just go ahead and put a flat dollar amount on the option 3, and that does not adjust each year with the IRS tax table. So, yeah. Okay, so the employee contributions have already been taxed, okay? But each year, you're only allowed to, the IRS regulation only allows us to pay a certain amount of that money out each year. So generally, you're going to be paying you're going to be paying taxes on pretty much, I would say on average, about 94% of your taxes, of your amount, I should say. It's going to be, the majority of it's going to be taxed, but you're going to get a 1099, and it's going to show what amount has already been taxed, okay, and what amount you are going to report to the IRS as non-taxable and taxable income, okay? If you are employer paid, then all employer paid, then all of the money is taxable. Eventually, that employee contribution is going to drop off as well. It's going to run out, it's going to exhaust, and we will no longer see that, and you'll be paying 100% taxes. All right, so I'll go over this as quick as I can. Payment of benefits, okay, payments are issued 4 working days prior to the end of each month. Okay, so everybody gets paid on the same day. The direct deposit ensures the money. It states that because we do still have members that are getting their checks mailed out, but again, we will be going mandated direct deposit, and you'll get your check pretty much the same day as everyone else does. Okay, the first payment, now this is important. If you retire before the 15th of the month, you will get a check in that month. Okay, if you retire after the 15th of the month, you'll get a check in the following month. Okay, so that might determine when you want to retire. Okay, the preliminary payment and final calculation. What that means is that anytime you retire, you're put into a preliminary status. Preliminary means that we're assuming that that's what you're going to end up with as far as credit and salary. Okay, the employers are never up to date with us. They're usually, I'd say on average, about 3 months behind in reporting to us and us getting it into the accounts. So once all of that information is reported to us and verified, then we send out what's called your final calculation. It's a letter letting you know that everything's been reported, and usually your account, it's going to go up by a couple dollars. Usually that's what's going to happen. And then we retroactively pay what was shorted. Okay? So that's what preliminary and final is. Changes to the account. Any change you make to an account has to be done before the 14th of the month. Okay? So if it's done before the 14th of the month, then it'll take effect in that same month. So for example, taxes. If you want to change what your tax deduction is, it'll take effect in that month. Your direct deposit, your address, any of those changes have to be done before the 14th. So that's always important to remember. That's our cutoff. Okay, briefly I'll talk about reemployment. If you reemploy in the system, okay, out of state, private industry, federal government, there is no restrictions. You can work in there, and we don't need to know about it. Okay, it's not no problem there. Okay, if you go with a Nevada public employer, then we do have some restrictions. The big one is 90 days. Okay, you do have to wait at least 90 days before reemploying with a Nevada public employer. All right. The second thing to know is that if you are reemploying with a Nevada public employer, you need to find out if that position is an eligible or non-eligible position. Okay, an eligible position means that it's usually a full-time position of 20 or more hours per week, and they're going to enroll you in the system. If that happens, then we do have to suspend your pension during that time of reemployment. Okay? If it's a non-eligible position, that's usually an intermittent position, such as like a substitute position is one that does not enroll you into the system, a substitute teacher, for example. You can enter those positions, but there is earning limits, earning restrictions during that time. Okay? Right now, I believe it's about 23,900, right around there is where it's at right now. Generally, that changes usually every 2 to 3 years, so you want to check with us on what it is at that point. Best advice I can give you guys is just call us if you're going to be reemploying. If you're going to be reemploying, we can answer all those questions and make sure that you're not going to hurt your retirement in doing so. Yeah, there is a couple. How can I say? There's a couple ones that don't fall into that category. Okay, so like there is critical needs positions, for example. A critical need position. If you enter a position like that, you would not be subject to any of these reemployment policies. Okay, so like Legislative Counsel Bureau. If you enter a position like that, then yeah, those are also not going to be affected by the reemployment policy. So there is a couple of them out there that you can enter.
So yeah, so we have that every year during session. We have people that will hire on with session that are retired public employees, right? And they always call us and say, hey, I'd like to put as much money of my money that I'm getting into deferred comp, and so I don't mess up my taxes for my pension. right? So you can't, so those, a lot of those programs are, or a lot of those positions are kind of exempt from that. It's usually you're making less than the threshold anyway. So, yeah, as long, there are exempt positions, but you should double check with these guys before you take that position on.
Yes, you have a question? Yeah, the question is, so if you retire and then go ahead and go back to a Nevada public employer and are re-enrolled in the system, once you re-retire again, are your post-retirement increases reset? Well, there is a couple different ways to do that. It depends. If you actually combine your benefit and have it recalculated based off of your new years of service, then those post-retirement increases do reset. That's correct. That is correct. That's a good question, though. It's a great question. All right. So avoiding common mistakes. Okay. So again, basically, this is one great way to do it. Just make sure you come here. The one thing I'm going to say is that you really want to be proactive as possible with your retirement. More often than not, I run across a lot of people that are entering agreements to purchase time to get to 30 years, for example, before they retire, and they're expecting us to follow up on everything, and they don't call us or contact us to see where we're at on these deadlines. You want to make sure that you're on top of it. Call us, just call us and make sure that you're aware of what's going on. You've talked to your employer. You've also talked to your medical insurance provider. These are all the things that you want to do. There's so much involved in retiring. It's not just your PERS, but you have your deferred comp, you have your insurance, you have, some people have Social Security they have to take under account. There's a lot of different things to consider. So just please make sure you look at all that prior to retiring and coming into our office. Okay. Make sure to keep your address current too. Okay. You can do that either online or you can do that in writing. Okay. We do send a lot of publication. We send out your statements, so things like that. You always want to make sure to keep your address up to date. Don't assume just because you get a direct deposit, we don't need to have your current address. We want to make sure we have that up to date always. All right. Monitor your tax withholding. You can do that online. Your 1099 can also be accessed online if you have a user account set up. Okay. Those are usually sent out by January 31st, just like your tax information is now. Okay. Social Security and PERS. Quickly, Social Security benefits may be reduced if you are not eligible for a PERS benefit before January 1, 1986 or December 1st, 1982 for the spousal or survivor benefit. Okay? The federal laws that prohibit that drawing a public pension from the state of Nevada and Social Security at the same time is the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. There is some information in that handout that gets a little more into detail about how that works. Okay? Yes. More often than not, I have members when they are retiring, they come into my office. They've never, maybe they're young, they're 50, and they're retiring, and they're like, I have 15 years until I have to worry about Social Security. I would contact them as soon as possible, no matter what part in your career or what your eligibility is. Just contact them and find out where you stand with that. Okay. You can visit their website. You can give them a phone call. You can do all that. So it's pretty simple to get a hold of them nowadays, from what I hear. All right, PERS website briefly. How many of you have set up an account on our website? If it's been, okay, good, most of you have. If it's been a while and you went to our website, it probably wasn't the most user-friendly, say 5-10 years ago, but it's really good now. They've revamped it. Please make sure you log in, set up an account. We have publications that we post there, and you can also do estimates, purchase of service agreements, And when you retire, everything's going to switch over to a retirement account for you. You can manage your whole account online. It's really good. Our website is really good. So, and that's pretty much all I have. So thank you very much, everybody. If you guys have any other questions, please make sure to give us a call. All right?
Does anybody have any pressing questions while I get the other presentation up? Go ahead and ask questions.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Okay. All right, we're going to get going here, guys. Everybody, everybody knows where the restroom is at. If you need to use it, feel free to get up and use it. But I'm going to start with the estate planning presentation next, okay? So did everybody get the handout or the handout for this presentation? If you don't have one, raise your hand and Micah or somebody will get you one. Does everybody have the presentation? Okay, so in the spirit of full disclosure here, you guys are going to get, this presentation is a presentation that I have used probably for the last 20 years. A little bit about myself, a little bit about my background, is I own an estate planning firm. I still own it, and I have written probably thousands of trusts or help people devise thousands of trusts through our staff attorneys, that sort of thing, and help people with estate preservation and estate planning. In the spirit of full disclosure, please don't call me and say, hey, will you do my trust for me? I cannot do that as a state employee. It's a conflict of interest. So I will not do your trust for you. But what I can do is give you a whole bunch of cool knowledge so that you can go out and hopefully get somebody to make this happen for you. And there are some great resources here at the state that you can utilize and actually get a discount on making that happen, okay? So for this, in the spirit of full disclosure, this is not a sales pitch or anything like that. I want to make sure you all understand that. I will not do your trust for you, so don't call me. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them for you, right? You can call me. I'm absolutely happy to answer those for you. Sometimes people will call me and say, hey, this is what this attorney is recommending. This is what, this is what they're going to charge me. And I can give them my opinion on whether or not that sounds reasonable or not, okay? And I'm happy to do that for you, but I can't accept any compensation, anything like that. Every time I do this, I have someone call me and say, please, please, please do my trust. I won't tell anybody. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Just not gonna do that, okay? It's an ethical thing for me. I just won't even tread that, okay? We'll talk a little bit about that. I appreciate you saying that. So, yeah. So, and the other thing that I wanted to tell each of you is this presentation is not intended to like scare you or anything like that. I'm going to give you guys some facts that we have gotten and collected over the years from AARP. People that have done a lot of research on this and why estate preservation is so important, okay? Do I have any attorneys in the room? Any attorneys? Anybody? Really? Usually I always have at least one or two. Okay, so anyway, So just in this, are you an attorney? Thank you so much for letting me know that. All right, so we're going to get started. This is a presentation I call Creating Peace of Mind for Your Tomorrow, okay? So I get this question a lot. What is estate planning? Some people hear all these different terms, right? Estate planning essentially is passing your leftover property and assets to people or charities you desire to upon death, okay? It's also known as developing an estate preservation plan or sometimes family wealth planning, right? And the one thing I want you to leave here is understanding that proper planning helps you to keep as much of your family's unused wealth, right? So if you use it while you're alive, good for you. That's the whole point. And so, but if you have unused wealth, certainly I'm sure most of you would say, yes, I want it to go to who I want it to go to, not to the state. I don't want it to be consumed in processes like probate and things like that, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about this, all right? The goals and objectives of estate planning are, number one, to keep more of your hard-earned money, to protect your family, as well as to control your assets. And it also allows you to become a good steward of your property. And most important, it provides you peace of mind that you know where your stuff's gonna go in the event that you die a premature death or that you die, when you're 110 years old, okay? So keep that in mind. And why does all this matter? I get that question a lot. And so I throw out some questions that you need to consider. Do you want to control who will get all your assets? If you ask yourself that question, you say yes. Do you have a blended family? If you are in that realm, so more and more families are blended families that we see nowadays. Estate planning is even more essential for you. Do you know who will look after your children if you were to die prematurely? I'll tell you a few little stories that kind of should concern you and certainly concern me as well. And what about your pets? How many of you are pet lovers? Yeah? And so in the state of Nevada, one of the bad things is, I've seen this in so many estate plans that I've settled, is where somebody has or in probate court especially, where somebody has pets and there's nobody willing or capable of taking the pets, so they just give them to, used to be, they gave it to the pound, and if the pound couldn't adopt them out, they were euthanized. Now, thank goodness, we have organizations like the Nevada Humane Society and no-kill shelters and stuff that will continue to try and get them adopted. But just like a human, that's probably pretty traumatic for your animals as well. And so if you're a pet lover, you may want to consider that as well, okay? So some of the comments that I hear quite a bit are, one of them is, I'm not wealthy, should I worry about estate planning? Or I hear, isn't estate planning only for the rich? First of all, estate planning can be done by anybody regardless of your estate, right? The fact that you put a plan in place is what's important. What is entailed in that plan was going to be different for everybody, okay, depending upon your personal situation. Again, we are like snowflakes, right? We all are unique in everything that we do. What works in my estate plan may not work in yours, may not work in yours, may not work in yours, and so forth. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind. Let's see here. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? Fingerprints? Okay. If you want to say that, that's fine. I like snowflakes better. I have young kids, so Frozen is something we watch quite a bit, and so yeah, snowflakes. All right, so a little bit of estate planning 101 here for you guys. Let's test your knowledge a little bit. What if you have a will? What if you don't have a will or a trust? Who determines who gets what? What do you think? So some of you say the state. Who says your attorney? Who says your parents? Who says your spouse? So a couple of you raised your hands, right, for your spouse. Not necessarily, right? A lot of times the state is who determines who gets what. And really they have the bottom line, especially if it goes through probate. So how many, just by show of hands, how many of you have experienced the probate process? Anybody in the room? Yeah? Does anybody know anybody that has experienced the probate process? So quite a few more people. Have any of you, including our counselor in the room, have any of you ever heard from any of those people or yourself, somebody that has come forward and has gone through the probate process and said, wow, that was the greatest experience I've ever experienced. And man, I can't wait to do it again, right? Pretty rare that I hear that. I will just tell you. Counselor, are you ever heard it? Okay, so it sometimes can be grueling for people, right? It can take a long time. It can cost a lot of money. Sometimes it's grueling, okay? So what if you don't have a will? Oh, I already did that, right? No, what if you don't have a will or a trust? Who will care for your children? Who makes that decision? Anybody want to take a stab at that? The court? What about your spouse? Do you think your spouse can, or former spouse can make that decision? A lot of people say they think that it can, but we have seen a lot of that, but we have seen that that has been a false statement. So, and if you've pre-declared that through a guardianship, then you can do that. A lot of times, if the court has to decide that for you, and they don't think it's in the child's best interest, that is not happening. I apologize. I'm just shooting it straight to you. Yeah. So if you haven't pre-declared that in a formal guardianship document, then the court has to make that tough decision for you. And sometimes it's not always aligned with what maybe you may have wanted, right? So the court typically makes that decision. So one of the questions that, or some stats for you here, a little over half of Americans don't even have a will. So a little over half of, and I'm seeing a lot of you guys go, I'm one of those, right? And so you want to make sure that if you do anything at all, the only thing you do is for planning for your estate is create a will and maintain that will and maybe some ancillary documents like powers of attorney. That would be like the minimum. The only thing that would be worse of that would be doing nothing, okay? So does that make sense? And sir, did you have a question? We'll get to that here in just a minute, okay? All right, so 70% of Americans will procrastinate usually until it's too late, okay? So a lot of people don't even take advantage of this. So some things to avoid. Probate is one of those things that you want to probably try to avoid if you can help it. Having your estate open to the public. I don't know, how many of you would enjoy that? Would you guys want all your stuff, everybody to know what you have and who it's going to and that sort of thing? Does it matter to you? Most people would shake their head and say, yeah, I want my affairs private, right? If you had to choose, you'd probably select that, right? Living probate, which is losing control of your property, conservatorship proceedings, having no will or only having a will, relying on joint tenancy. A lot of us rely on joint tenancy just as a sole way of estate planning. There's some real pitfalls to that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then not appointing a guardian for your minor or disabled children. And I throw disabled children in there because I'm living that right now. Our family, my wife and I, my sweet bride, I got to tell you, my wife is my best friend, man. I love that woman. I am so fortunate to be married to such a wonderful lady. I can't stress that enough. She just is just I tell everybody, Mike is like Mary Poppins. Well, my wife is definitely like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. And I will tell you that she agreed to allowing my uncle, who is 64 years old today, or I mean right now, and he has Down syndrome. She agreed to allowing him to come in our home and for us to care for him in our home. And that's not very easy, I gotta tell you. My wife, poor thing, she busts her hump taking care of 3 kids and even helping with my uncle. And I have to really kind of gauge that because I don't ever want to overwhelm her. And how we got in that situation was something we didn't plan for, right? My grandparents, I come from a big Italian family, right? And my grandma and my grandpa, they are like old school Italians, man. You know, back when they had Johnny is his name. My uncle's name is John. Back when they had him, he was they would either, you know, people would either say, or professionals would tell you either put him, institutionalize him, right, and put him in a foster home, or, you know, put him up for adoption or something like that, or you just abort him, right? And my grandparents, of course, weren't going to have anything to do with that, and they ended up raising him just like they would any of their own children, and you know, they did a great job. There wasn't a lot of like schooling and special programs and stuff for these folks that had these disabilities back then, and so they did the best that they knew how to do, you know, but they didn't plan for what was going to happen when they go. And so my grandfather ended up dying first, and my grandmother did her best to try and raise Johnny and continue to raise him, and then she started having failure in health, right? And this guy has relied on somebody caring for him his whole entire life. So really, you don't just flip a switch and say, okay, you're on your own, right? Somebody has to care for him, and it's either a family member or it's the state of Nevada, right? And so we ended up, my grandmother died in 2010, and my other uncle tried to take a stab at caring for him, and it was just too hard on their family, and they ended up putting him in a group home. He did horrible in a group home, so my wife and I said, you know, we just can't stand back and let this happen. We brought him into our home, and we've had him for the last 6 years, or 7 years now. And I gotta tell you that we did not plan that, and I know my grandparents would not have wanted that either. They wouldn't want to have burdened anybody, and I don't look at it as a burden, I really look at it as an opportunity. But I gotta tell you, it's tough. We can't do certain things, my wife and I, we can't do certain things because we have to make accommodations for my uncle. He can't go camping with us, and we tried doing that, and he fell down and broke a hip, and so we've had this, you know, we've really been kind of stuck to a lot. We're planning a 3-week vacation, and you can't believe the planning, but I do more planning and trying to care for him than I do planning the darn vacation. So keep that in mind, you know, if you have disabled children, that's really important that you do some planning, and you owe it to your loved ones to make that happen, okay? All right, so some other things. There are some taxes that can potentially impact your planning: capital gains taxes, federal estate taxes, state inheritance taxes, and gift tax. The federal estate tax is one that we used to worry about a lot, but we don't worry about it so much anymore just because the threshold is so high. I think it's like 5 million, or a little bit over 5 million per person. So if you don't have you're hearing a bunch of laugh, but you would be surprised. I had a guy that was just a rank and file. In fact, he worked for Buildings and Grounds, and he has been paying on a $500,000, or I'm sorry, a $5 million life insurance policy with Mass Mutual of all people since he was young. And he'd been paying on that. His parents opened it up for him because they were older and they wanted to make sure he was cared for. And he continued on with the premiums on that. And it was one of these old policies that was just indefinite. It was a term policy that was just or a paid up whole life policy is what it was, with a term rider. And he just continued to pay the premium on that term rider. And lo and behold, he passed away. And now the wife came, who, you know, there was a very, very modest family, kind of even classified as low income, and now she gets $5 million and has an estate tax issue. And she ended up losing about probably $1.5 million of that. So, yeah, so anyway, it does happen to people, okay? All right, so what is probate? Is anybody, I asked who's been through the probate process. Many of you raised your hands. Probate is the court process that validates your will, okay? It passes ownership of your property to your heirs. It settles any debt that you may owe, and it also clears title to your assets. If you have a will, I promise you, you probably will go through probate, okay? So a will is kind of a ticket to the probate process, guaranteed, not guaranteed, but pretty darn sure you're gonna go through it. The state of Nevada has this threshold that says that any asset that's left outside of a living trust or that is above $20,000 has to go through a probate process. Sometimes it's a simplified process, and we like that, but it still has to go through a court process. They still have to call for creditors to make claim against the estate, all these things. Everything's public. It is what it is, okay? So keep that in mind. I like AARP. They did this report on probate consumer perspectives and concerns. Back in 1990, it was published, and I love, there's a lot of real good information in there, and I've pulled some out. I've used it over the years to help people understand how the probate process and why it's so important to do some estate planning. Upcoming generations will lose more than $2 to $3 billion annually, is one of the statistics that they have in there, just to the probate process. 2 to 3 billion, and this was back in 1990, for crying out loud. So you know that it's probably more than that now. Conservatively, 8 to 10% of every estate will be consumed by probate unless proper steps are taken. I got to be honest with you, I think that's a little bit inflated, because my experience is more of the 3 to 7% range, 3 to 10% range. I have seen some a lot more than that. Ted Williams, anybody know the baseball player Ted Williams? Right? You guys all remember him? That was a real travesty of an estate. Here's a guy that probably was super wealthy, and he had 2 children, and one wanted to put his body in cryogenic freezing, if you guys remember that, and the other one, the daughter, was like, no, let's just put him to rest. And they fought in court the whole time, and when it was all said and done, the poor daughter had to go publicly to benefits and stuff like that just to get enough money to pay the legal cost. The whole entire estate got depleted by, no offense, counselor, by attorneys and by the courts and appraisers and accountants and all that stuff. So you have to keep that in mind. Yes? Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a second, Ann. I appreciate you saying that. In some cases, attorney's fees can consume up to 20% or more of an estate's value for the attorney to take the estate through probate. And that's not a bad mark against the attorney. It's just sometimes it's such a long process that they have to be compensated for their time. I've seen some probates last up to 3 to 5 years. So, and those are uncomplicated cases, right? If they get a lot of creditors that are coming and we have to disprove that, or you have sibling or children that are not agreeing with each other, that sort of thing, then you have some issues. For estates of the middle class, attorney and personal representative fees can deplete assets as much as 10%, even in uncomplicated cases. So those are some statistics out of that report. The disadvantages of probate are, number one, it takes a long time. The average probate court takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months, and all of your assets are frozen during that time. So if you have bills that are due and your executor, maybe your son or daughter, you've listed as your executor, they can't even touch that usually until the probate is finished. And so sometimes there's a lot of penalties and stuff like that sometimes associated with it, and it just becomes a kind of a nightmare for a lot of people. Typically consumes about 4 to 10% is what I think is a little bit more reasonable of your gross estate. Probate records are public records. Anyone can find out about your private affairs, anybody. In fact, and I'll bring that up, I've given this presentation. Anna's come to a lot of my events and stuff, and when I started in this whole entire field, I had to go and actually witness so many probate courts and settlements and that sort of thing. And so I remember right here in Carson City, actually, there was a probate that seemed like a pretty straightforward probate, very modest estate. Guy died, and they asked for any creditors to come up and lay claim against the estate. And this guy came up, seemed like a real legit dude, and he just said, Your Honor, I would like to present a bill that was never paid by the decedent. I did some gutter work for this person. I own a gutter company, and like seamless gutters, and it was $10,000. He never paid the bill, so I'd like to see if I can recoup some of that. And the judge really, what he has to look at is, okay, is this legit, and how can I disprove that it's not? A lot of times you can't. And so the judge ended up, asking, is there anybody that can disprove this, and they looked at the kid, the son, who was the executor, who lived back east somewhere, and he's like, I don't see anywhere in his checking account or anything where he made a check, and a guy produced an invoice, so the judge had no choice. He had to give a claim of $10,000 to this guy, right? And I didn't think anything of it, right? Everything else went as planned, and I didn't think anything of it. And then about 3 weeks later, I went to another probate court hearing in Reno, Washoe County, and the same guy was up there wearing a different suit that time. And he said, same thing. He says, I did some gutter work for this individual. It was about, he changed the figure around because it was a bigger house, so about $12,000. And I haven't been paid, and the same thing happened. So I went back to our firm, and I asked some of our staff attorneys, I'm like, man, is this legit? Something's just not jiving here, And they both came back and said, yeah, there's people that make a living at doing that kind of stuff. And that's why the probate process is sometimes a skewed process, that if we can't disprove it, then we have to account for it. And so, I'm not saying that everybody's that dishonest, and I don't even know, maybe it was legit, I don't know, you know what I mean? But just seemed kind of funky to me. And in talking to some of my friends who are judges or senior judges that have worked on the bench for a long, long time, they have confirmed that yeah, there's people that make a living going around to different courts and doing that in multiple states and everything. So you do have to be very, very important. Sometimes it invites contest, right? It invites things to happen there. So that's why the probate process, sometimes it can be grueling, right? So I don't tell you that to scare you, but there is that possibility always, okay? A good living trust can help you avoid all that stuff if you execute it and you fund it properly. Your will cannot help you in life. A lot of people don't realize that a will is only effective after death. So it can do nothing for you if you become incapacitated, you get in a car accident and you can't make decisions on your own. That will does nothing for you until you die, right? And so incapacity can lead to what we call living probate, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about. A lot of people ask me, what is living probate? Living probate occurs when you become incapacitated and can't make decisions for yourself. You may be declared incompetent in court, and anyone, even a stranger, can be appointed to take care of your property and your person. I run all my Uncle John's services. He's kind of listed as his own guardian because he has enough faculty to be able to make important decisions like, do you want to, you understand this medication and what it's for, that sort of thing. And so we try and allow him to make a lot of those decisions, but the group that we go through, at any time, if he was to become incapacitated, they could easily apply for guardianship, and I wouldn't have a say-so in it. So, we're closely monitoring that, and I'm going to probably apply for a guardianship for him here real soon, because people with Down syndrome, especially when they get older in their 60s like that, they tend to develop dementia and Alzheimer's very, very fast. The onset's really quick, and we're starting to see a lot of that with John, unfortunately. And so we're really keeping an eye on that. And the problem with claiming guardianship right now is that he would lose a lot of his services that he gets through the state to help to stay living, And so we are really watching that and trying to delay that as much as we possibly can. So anyone can apply, yes, even you. Remember, through a legal proceeding, you can apply to handle the financial and personal affairs of any incompetent people. In fact, there are people that's what they do for a living, is they go around and say, Your Honor, my company has done this. We have a track record. We're bonded. We're trusted. We'd be happy to do this for the court, and that's how they make their paycheck. And so, how do you guard against living probate? Make a decision to create and execute the necessary forms while you're able to and you're competent. That's the first thing. If the only thing you do from when you leave here, if the only thing you do is execute a power of attorney for assets, a power of attorney for healthcare, or what we hear a lot of times referred to as a healthcare proxy, right? And maybe like a conservatorship declaration. If that's the only thing, we call those ancillary documents in the legal world. And so if that's the only thing you do, you're far ahead of doing nothing, right? So just at the very minimum do that. You can execute a lot of those documents on your own. You can go right to the hospital and get a healthcare proxy and handwrite it out, have it notarized, and you're good to go, okay? So keep that in mind. Ma'am, question? Say it again. Yeah, so a DNR is a do not resuscitate order, and so you can execute those as well if that's what your desires are. There's a lot of people that are cool being on life support, especially if they're in a situation where they feel like they have a good life to live, or they have people dependent upon them, that sort of thing. So keep that in mind. We had a real interesting, you guys may remember a case out of Florida where a young gal was incapacitated, and the parents were trying to say that they wanted her on life support, and the husband, she had executed a do not resuscitative order to not be resuscitated or be on life support, and her husband was trying to put her to rest, and they got in this huge fight, huge court battle, and I don't think anybody won there, to be honest with you. I think it was just a travesty, but it created some case law that we were really, really concerned about in the estate planning world, because a lot of attorneys, thank you, counselor, a lot of attorneys were a little bit concerned that they were going to have to change the way they plan for a lot of people, and some of them really did. So you do want to keep that in consideration. Sir, do you have a question? Yeah, the argument was from the parents was that no, they had a will and a power of attorney that they felt that wasn't her intention to replace. They felt like the husband had influenced her to do that while she was still competent and on her deathbed, in a sense. And so they executed it, kind of while she was there, and she made that decision, and the parents didn't agree with that they felt like she was undue influence to make that happen. Regardless, well, none of us really know, right? I mean, it is what it is, and if you do make the decisions ahead of time, then it's a lot more defensible, right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, so 4 ways to pass your estate to loved ones. There's joint tenancy, there's pay or transfer on death, there's through a last will and testament, or there's through a living trust. So these are the kind of the 4 most common ways. I like to just highlight there are some other ways, but it's really dependent upon whether you qualify under certain circumstances. So I'll highlight the 4 that we typically see the most and talk about those a little bit. Let's look at the effects of how your assets are titled, okay? So if you title your assets in joint tenancy, anybody have joint tenancy in their home? Probably quite a few of you do. Joint tenancy is a very common estate plan that people utilize. Many of you hold your assets in joint tenancy with someone else, or your spouse, or maybe your children. However, joint tenancy has a lot of perils and more hidden dangers than any other type of planning, except doing nothing, of course. So we're going to get into a little bit of these. Some of the pitfalls of joint tenancy is it only delays the probate process. You don't avoid it, okay? There could be some capital gains. There's this misnomer that capital gains taxes are potentially avoided. That's not the case in a lot of cases. There are unintentional gift taxes you don't even know about sometimes. The property is subject to court judgment and creditors. So if your joint tenant or your joint owner is sued, for example, or divorces, you may lose part of your asset as well. So I saw this happen with one of my own clients, where she had a house that was in joint tenancy. She really didn't have very much in assets, and she's like, I don't think I really need to do a trust. I just own my home, And I think what I'm going to do is just put my daughter on as a joint tenant. We advised against that for all these reasons, and she went ahead and did it on her own, right? And we just told her, listen, we can't be held responsible for that. You know what the pitfalls are. And sure enough, what happened was the daughter went out and had a great time one night and had a few too many drinks, and she got in an accident and killed somebody. And that family not only collected from her insurance and filed a civil suit, but they filed a civil suit against the daughter. And because the daughter had joint ownership in her mom's house, they had to liquidate that house and pay the legal expenses on that. You never want to put yourself in that position, of course, and there are some ways around that, which hopefully you can utilize those, but it's not for everybody. So keep that in mind. Yes, ma'am. Well, so I appreciate you saying that. The issue with transfer on death is usually those are associated. We're going to get to that here in just a second. That's okay. I'll talk about that here the next couple slides. So another thing, let me just tell you another thing about joint tenancy. I know another guy that had joint tenancy in a business, for example, okay? And he and a partner had a business relationship, and they owned 50-50, and this guy died. Well, you know who he became partners with? His wife, who he couldn't stand. And so they ended up, she wanted to go one direction, he wanted to go one direction, and they ended up having this huge battle in court that they all ended up spending a ton of money on, right? And lo and behold, they ended up liquidating the whole entire company, and he just finally just started a new company, but he lost tons of money because of that, right? So keep that in mind. You never know who you're going to be owning property with, right? So keep that in mind. So pay on death. This is another type of estate planning that we see people do. You may have assets that pay on death. This may work only if you have a few assets, or usually bank or brokerage accounts. We typically see this. And so, and usually you're only allowed to list one or two beneficiaries at the most. If it's contested, it is forced to go through probate. So you do have to, sometimes we do see these have to go through probate, especially if the kids can't, or whoever you had as listed as the beneficiaries can't agree, which anytime you have money involved, it's crazy. Your kids sprout horns and all these tails and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. Money's a crazy way to split up a family, it seems like. I've seen so much of it in my career, it's unreal. Most states don't allow pay on death for deeds if you own property. So you might want to look into that and see. I'm not really certain whether Nevada ever started allowing that or not. I know for a long time they didn't, so you may want to check into that. Last will and testament. A will, it may cost you less to establish up front, but it may express your desires for passing your assets, but it has many, many costly disadvantages, including it's very easily contestable, and it actually invites contests in a way. So because it's public and because anybody can see what's in your assets, sometimes it's all divulged, so people come forward and say, yeah, I remember that gun collection my dad had. Who's going to get that? You know what I mean? And you argue back and forth. The kids argue back and forth on who wants that. And finally, the judge will just say, you know what? How about neither of you get it? How about I just liquidate it and just give you guys each the equal amount of cash, right? And I've seen that happen a time or two as well. It guarantees probate will occur. Don't believe that when you hear, probate is easy or inexpensive in your state. I can tell you right now, I did have one person say that to me. They said, I went through it. It wasn't so bad, I go, oh, really? How long did it take? Well, it was only about 5 years. And I go, and what was the total amount of the estate? Well, after it was all said and done, I ended up getting about 70% of what my parents had and that sort of thing. But I'm happy with that. I kind of just stood back and I'm like, really? You're happy with that? I wouldn't be happy with that. So it's really up to you. You know, if you want to go through, you want your kids or your loved ones to go through that process, then doing a will is just the only thing you really need to do. It's proven by studies to be costly, time-consuming, and public. It's only valid when the probate court approves it, right? So, and it doesn't provide protection while you're living either. Remember, it only provides protection after you've already passed. So number 4, the fourth way is a good revocable living trust. This is the only estate planning tool that addresses many of these concerns and is an effective way to avoid many pitfalls of proper estate planning or improper estate planning. If a good living trust is executed and funded properly, then it's the best tool you have to avoid the probate process and even living probate as well. It protects your privacy. If you're doing everything right and you've monitored it and you've executed it right and you've funded it properly, then no one has to know about your personal affairs. It could be settled out of court just with your successor trustee making it happen. So that's kind of a benefit there. It's revocable for the most part, a revocable living trust, which means that as long as you're still living and competent, you can make changes to it or amend it anytime you want. I had a client of mine who came to me and we did their living trust for them and stuff, and they came to me about 3 years later and said, you know what, we need to amend our trust. And I go, okay, yeah, we can do that for you, and what's going on? And we sat and visited, and well, my daughter married this guy that I just can't stand. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, okay, so what do you want to do? She goes, I want to disinherit her. And I said, okay. Hey, sure you want to do that, you know? And I said, we can make some provisions that kind of protect, you know, that from your ex-son-in-law or your son-in-law from getting any of that. And he's like, nope, because I'm disinheriting her. When she divorces him, I'll put her back on. And so you can make these provisions and amendments if you want to do that. It's a little drastic, I think, but certainly you have the control to do that. It protects your wishes and desires after you die. So if you want something specifically to go to a specific individual or an organization like a charity or something like that, that has to happen, right? Whoever your successor trustee is when you die has to validate that trust to make sure that it was distributed properly. So that's kind of a cool thing. It's valuable for both small and large estates. It allows you to pass assets to your family quickly and efficiently without using courts. It minimizes the federal and estate taxes or capital gains taxes as well. It allows you to appoint a guardian to raise your children. I've never really seen this happen, but I will tell you right now that it looks like we might have some folks from Department of Welfare in the room. Is that correct? Anybody from Welfare or Family Services in the room? Anybody? Okay. One of the things that we hear about, I've never seen it personally happen, but one of the things we hear about is, actually I have seen it happen. Let me take that back. Where a husband and wife they were on a trip, they were both killed in a car accident. They had 3 little ones at home, and trying to remember, and they ended up, they were on a trip, so the kids were being watched by somebody, like a family friend or something like that. When that happened, all 3 of those kids were taken in child protective custody because the grandparents lived back east or somewhere in another state somewhere, and they had to end up petitioning the court to get guardianship or conservatorship of those children to be able to care for them, right? They went through that process, but is anything that has to do with the courts a fast process? Probably not, right? And so it took them about 4 months to be able to go through that process and make that happen. And those kids, I'm sorry to say, were all put into a foster home in different foster homes, right? So that 3-month time frame, I think is what it was, although they came back and they were reunified and grandma and grandpa ended up caring for them, how traumatic would that be, right? I mean, I know having 3 little ones, we have 6 children, by the way, and so having 3 little ones, I don't know how I would I don't think I can handle that. I understand I'm dead, so I guess it doesn't matter, but man, I struggle with that one. I'd want a plan to make sure that I made provisions for that, okay? Deals with contests or provides for special needs children and grandchildren. It deals with contests of your wishes and spendthrift problems as well. In all of our trusts that we write, we put a non-contest clause where if somebody who's listed in the trust contests it in any way, they get a single dollar, right? And the judge can execute that at any time. In fact, I had one of these cases happen here about 5 years ago, where husband and wife owned about a $5.5 million estate, and they had multiple kids, and all of them, I'm sad to report that mom and dad enabled a crud out of every one of these kids, and they expected everything. They weren't even dead, and they were trying to get stuff out of the house, and we had to go and file a temporary restraining order against 2 of them to keep them out of the house, and we had to have Lyon County sheriff's deputies go over to the house and monitor it. It was just a huge hassle, and we ended up when it was all said and done, the judge brought them all into court and said, this is how we're going to handle this. A little bit of tough justice here, right? They said, you two who are causing all the problems, guess what? You get $1 each. That's it. The rest of you will split up and it was the grandchildren that ended up getting everything. The 2 children ended up getting $1 apiece. So you can make those provisions, and a court will adhere to them, I guarantee it. So think about that. This is a chart that I put together that kind of shows you a side-by-side comparison of having a will versus having a living trust and that process, and you can use that as kind of a gauge to help you, right, in determining whether or not this might be an avenue you want to go down, right? And then not all trusts and living trusts and estate plans are created equal. I will tell you that. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, that it's going to be advantageous for you. Make sure that you go to an attorney or an estate planning advisor that kind of specializes in that. So there's 2 different ways you can get this done. Okay, well, 3 really. You can go to an attorney and spend sometimes an exorbitant amount of money to make that happen, right? And to get all these documents done. There are some very, very reasonable legal professionals out there that will make this happen for you at a reasonable cost, okay? The second way is to utilize an estate planning advisor who is somebody that kind of coordinates everything for you. And usually they pre-negotiate prices with attorneys they may have on staff or access to, that regardless of how much time it takes, this is the flat rate, right? And this is everything that I'm expecting for that flat rate. I like that a little bit more than doing a per hour type arrangement, like a lot of attorneys do. So give that some consideration. One of the cool things for you guys as state employees is we have the Employee Assistance Program. Everybody's heard of that, hope, right? And if you haven't, you can access information on that through the DHRM website, which is hr.nv.gov, hr.nv.gov. Sorry? Okay, and so keep that in mind. The Employee Assistance Program allows for, a lot of people think it's only for like counseling and stuff like that. So not. There's so much more stuff that you can utilize it for. And you can actually go on there and say, listen, I want to do some estate planning. I want to talk to somebody about devising a living trust. And they will set you up with one of their attorneys that is local here, that you can go in, have a free consultation. Usually it's guaranteed a half hour, but the one that I had was like an hour and a half. They were way cool, and they didn't charge me anything for it. And I got to say that the attorney that I used was somebody that I went to was somebody out of Reno here. I would refer you to them, but I think they have left and gone to another state. So, but the attorney that I used, or that they referred to me, was great. And I ended up visiting with her, and of course you can imagine I asked a ton of questions. I wasn't there to have her doing a trust for me, but I wanted to see what the process was before I started referring people to that. And I was pretty impressed with that. I got to tell you that the price that she gave me was reasonable, I thought. And then also by going through AEP and using one of their attorneys, they give you a 25% discount on their rate. So you get that pretty sizable discount. You don't typically get that from anywhere else. And so that's a great resource for you if you want to use that. There are, a number of attorneys here in town or in northern Nevada here that you can use. You can use paralegals to do a lot of this work for you. Although I do caution you in making sure that if you're going to do that, or if you're going to do it on your own, like through the internet and download forms or buy Susie Orman's software that you see at Costco or Willmaker they have there, I do caution you because a lot of times those are boilerplate type documents and they may not contain the state-specific language that needs to be included in your trust. So regardless if you do that or not, you may want to have somebody review it and just pay a little bit to have somebody review it to make sure that it's a valid document and that it's going to do what you want it to do, okay? Yes, ma'am. You do. Yeah. I don't know about that. Call them and ask them. I'm not sure how that works. I love the EAP program. I can tell you when I first started working for the state of Nevada, my wife left. She goes, "Oh, her sister was having a baby, and she lives in Georgia, right?" And so she's like, "Do you mind if I go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem. We only had we didn't even have our younger kids. All our kids were older." And she said, can I go to Georgia and help my sister?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with that." And right before she was leaving, and we're actually driving to the airport, she goes, "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Teresa, my now 20-year-old, goes to Brigham Young University in Idaho." She said to me, she goes, "Oh, I just remembered that I agreed to do this Girl Scout thing for Teresa's troop. And we have 10, 15 girls coming over and their parents for this badge ceremony thing I had no clue about, right?" And she's like, "Do you think you can make it happen or do you want me to cancel?" I go, "No, I'll try and wing it, And so I called the EAP program and I said, "Hey, do you guys have a referral for a party planner, that I can maybe call and hire, And they're like, "Oh, we even got that, we got something better. How about we plan it for you and we'll give you all the instruction on everything you need to do. All you got to do is make assignments and go and buy the stuff." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great. You guys will do that for free." They did all that. And all these people came and the kids came to my house and the moms, it was all moms, and they all came up there like, "Oh, Mr. Beamer, wow, you are like the ultimate husband, man. You are," I go, "Yeah, it's kind of how I roll, it's, I owe that to the AAP program." That's my testimony to the AAP program, why I love it so much. So choose wisely, the 4 Ps, okay? This is just a kind of a benchmark for you to help you understand the 4 Ps. Your estate plan should provide protection, it should provide probate avoidance, it should provide privacy, and it should provide you what peace of mind you want, okay? There's some resources available to you. You can, again, reach out to the AEP program, utilize a certified estate planning advisor, attorney or paralegals that specialize in estate planning law. There's a great guy here in town named John Gavin. If you have never met John, he's fabulous, and he will do a great job for you. He's very reasonable, especially if you tell him, "I work for the state and Rob Beamer referred me to you." I promise you he'll give you a discount, okay? Reach out to your ARP representative for discounts, or even the local senior center can give you do certain things for you. They have an attorney here at the local senior center that will do living trusts and power of attorneys at a real big discount as well. I think the EAP program is a little bit better, but yeah, you can check into that if you want, okay? And lastly, you just owe it to yourself and your family to consider doing some estate preservation regardless of what you choose to do, okay? Any questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, so I will just tell you that you got to be very careful. Some of these groups will do seminars, invite you to dinners and stuff like that, you know, oh, we'll buy you dinner if you come, and you want to be a little bit careful there because typically they're there to sell you something, right? There is a couple of firms that's all they do. Anderson, Dorn and Rader out of Reno is one of those firms. I will tell you, I know all the attorneys there. They're great people. They are a little spendy, you know what I mean? But you will get a good, decent document by going to them if you want to pay the price. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Don't know them. Yeah, don't know them. Don't know them. Ma'am. Yeah. 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 I don't mention that too much because it kind of confuses people, but really the living trust is kind of the foundation, right? Everything, there's all kinds of different supporting documents like pour-over wills, a last will and testament, trust abstracts. There's all these different supporting documents that kind of support and strengthen the trust document. And you want to make sure that you have that. My binders for my trust are about 2 to 3 inches thick with just for a single individual. If it's a married couple, it's even more than that. And I organize it nice with tabs and stuff, and that's what you should expect from people. If somebody just gives you a pile of documents, say, hey man, do you organize this for me? How do I know what this is, you know? And you may want to say, okay, if you're not gonna do that, then if you're not gonna provide that service, I may wanna look at somebody else, okay, ma'am? Sometimes you do, okay? So the question was, if you have a document, or trust or a will or power of attorneys that were created in another state, and you move to another state, do you have to redo it? Sometimes you do, especially the ancillary documents, the power of attorneys, the last will and testament, your pour-over will, your conservatorship documents. Sometimes you do have to create those because each state has their own state-specific form that they want you to use that they will honor, right? So you don't have issues. You may want to review that if you do move through states. I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of companies out there, including the group that I go through, that I do all my trusts through, that my trust is good in all 50 states in the United States, right? And that's why it's so thick. I saw some of you guys going, holy crap, 3-4 inches thick. I actually go through every state and look at what their state-specific language is for estate planning, and I include that language in the trust so that if they did move to Texas, for example, or Florida, or Arkansas, who has state-specific language, that's included. When you talk to your attorney, ask them that. Say, listen, if I moved to another state, am I gonna have to redo this? Or do you include the state-specific language for all the other states in the state of Nevada so I don't have to worry about it? Okay, so that's something you can think about, sir. Again, whole nother realm of estate planning. Most foreign countries will recognize a living trust. In fact, the majority of countries, estate planning really originated out of England. So I mean, most foreign countries will recognize that, except for some of the more radical countries, like some parts of Africa and Middle East and stuff like that. Sometimes they just take your estate, especially if they know you're American. Yeah, cancel Christmas for you. Mexico and Canada are really good. Canada especially, we kind of train them on estate planning and vice versa. So I don't know about that. Yeah, I wish I could help you there. You get with an attorney and they can, an international estate planning attorney, be able to help you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're practicing estate planning law, you typically should know that stuff. If you go to an attorney that doesn't, you may want to stay away from them. So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So, yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, really where that comes into play is, like with motorhomes, things that are of value. I had a guy that did the exact same thing that you're talking about, and he bought a big diesel pusher that's valued at about $400,000, right? And they ended up getting in an accident, and the kids were trying to bring that into the trust. They left it out. And so the poor of a will brought it into the trust, but it had to go through probate first in order to do that. And so that was what held up just that one asset held up the being able to settle that estate for like 2 years. It was ridiculous. So yeah, you want to be careful there. If you create a living trust, you should consider if it's of any value, less or above $20,000, your vehicle, put it in your trust. You created this beautiful program to shelter that kind of stuff, right? And to be able to fund that kind of stuff in. You can do that right through D&D, okay? All right, so the next presentation, did I answer your question, sir? Okay, so the next presentation is with our fine folks from employee benefits, public employee benefits. So I'd like to introduce Amy, Amy Vanderlinden, and she is kind of our guru. Now, I will tell you that this presentation is fabulous. It's really going to help you understand the Medicare process and how, when you switch from being on the state employees benefits, benefits as a state employee, and how Medicare kind of comes into play there, and some things you got to look at. The process can be grueling, so we're bringing it right in front of you right now, so that you guys can prepare for it, and Amy's great at making that happen. So if any of you have to use the restroom, you can do so. I'm going to get her started just so we can keep on track, but and all of you should have her presentation. Is there anybody that doesn't have a presentation that wants one?
Oh,
so
in the back.
we have 3 in the back there.
Crystal,
Can we
grab?
get these 3 folks in the back?
Yeah, and again, this is benefits for the state of Nevada retirees. I know there were some city and county employees here earlier, so I just wanted to make that
perfect,
clear
yeah.
for you guys.
And even if you are with a city or state, or a city or county or something, or a school district, there may be similar circumstances with your entity. Very few entities provide retiree health insurance. I'll just tell you, just coming up in the past. So we're pretty lucky that some of them still have it. Me joining the state in 2014, I'll never see.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat. I get to talk about all the benefits, but yes, thanks, Rob, for setting this all up. Like Rob said, I'm Amy, and I'm from Public Employee Benefits Program and PEB Member Services. This presentation that I'm going to do, we're kind of short on time. Oh, sorry, I'm a little short. The presentation that we're going to go through today is usually done like over an hour and a half, and I have about 15 minutes. So we're going to kind of scurry through as fast as we can get through and as much as we can get through. So we're going to mostly talk about Medicare and aging into Medicare benefits when you are retired or planning to retire and already 65. We do have some flow charts over on the table over there. They are fantastic for if you are already 65 and retired, what you need to do and follow. And then if you plan to retire soon and you're 65, what you need to do. So you may want to grab one of those after we're presenting if you guys choose to. So who's eligible for PEB retiree coverage? You have to at least worked 5 years for the state of Nevada. Your hire date must have been before January 1st of 2010. So I don't think any of you guys were hired after 2010, correct? So worked at least five years and be collecting a PERS or retirement benefit. So if you plan to retire, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. All right, no problem. So you must be collecting a PERS benefit, or if you are with the school district, your TIA CREFT benefits. If you have worked your 30 years and you don't plan to draw a PERS benefit until you turn 60 or 65, then you will be eligible to get retiree benefits once you draw your PERS benefit. Does that make sense? So you're not considered a retiree for PEB purposes until you start drawing a PERS benefit. We kind of went over the dates, so you have to have worked at least 5 years and been employed before 2010, the max benefit for PEB is 20 years. So if you've worked 30 years, you're not going to get any more benefit than if you've worked a total of 20 service credits with PERS. Once you are going to be turning 65, if you're already retired, like I said, this presentation we geared more towards retirees that are going to be aging into Medicare. So once you are going to be turning 65, you'll receive a packet, a guide. Uh-oh. You're okay. All right. So about 2 months prior to your 65th birthday, you'll receive a package from PEB. You'll probably also be receiving a ton of mailings from AARP, Humana, Medicare, saying to sign up for your plans. Make sure you ignore everyone's stuff except for PEB's Open Public Employee Benefits package. That's very, very important. If you don't receive that package within 2 months or so of your 65th birthday, give us a call and let us know so we can make sure that it's on its way. And this will just kind of be your trigger to know that you need to start with your Medicare process. If you've been here all day, you kind of got the gist of Social Security and who qualifies for premium-free Part A. You have to work at least 40 quarters. I guess they call them credits now. I learned that today. So you have to work at least 40 quarters in the private sector to be eligible for free Part A. And we'll go over, if you're not qualified for free A, what your options are going to be. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and Social Security is going to be the one to determine your eligibility. So if you contact them, you may be able to qualify under a spouse as well. So if you're married and they qualify, then I think the only way that you don't normally qualify for free A is if you've worked in the school district your entire life. So state employees usually are eligible. So PEB's Medicare requirements, if you're already retired and you're going to be turning 65, you do need to enroll in free A and purchase Part B through Social Security for your Medicare. If you are actively working and you do not plan to retire anytime soon, you do not need to enroll in Medicare. PEB does not require active employees or their spouses that are turning 65 to enroll in Medicare A or B. You can enroll in Medicare, but it won't get accessed because our plan will always pay first. And for those that are on the consumer-driven health plan with an HSA, if you enroll in Medicare, your HSA will become an HRA, which is a health reimbursement arrangement, and you'll no longer be able to make contributions to it. And if you're actively working and have an HRA once you retire, that HRA money will go back to the state. So if you're actively working, you don't need to enroll in Medicare. That's the basics for that. And again, spouses have the same requirements. You had a quick question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. If you plan on working till you're 69 or 70, then you do not need to apply for Medicare benefits. Penalties? Oh, your prescription drug plan, you are covered under a group health insurance, and so that covers your drugs. So once you do go to sign up for your Medicare benefits, Social Security will not penalize you because you've had current group coverage, throughout. Nope. Once you plan to retire, contact PEB though, because you will need to enroll in Medicare about 60 to 90 days before you plan to retire if you're already 65. Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh. That is not a question for PEB. That you'd have to talk to Social Security or, yeah. We just do the health insurance, so I have no idea. Social Security is probably better to answer that. I'm going to fly through these slides real quick and then we can answer questions at the end. So PEBS, Medicare enrollment options, if you are retired or newly retiring and you're 65, you have no one else on the plan with you, you must enroll in a medical or supplement through Towers Watson One Exchange, which is our approved Medicare exchange vendor. So that's why I said throw anything away that you get in the mail saying, you know, sign up for our plan, do not sign up for anyone else's plan, and we're going to go over who Towers Watson is right after this. If you are a retiree and you have a spouse or a dependent on the plan with you that's not Medicare eligible, you have a few different options. You can stay on the PEB, PPO, or HMO plan with your spouse and get a reduced premium amount. You can enroll, you have to enroll in Medicare A and B. Or you can go to Towers Watson One Exchange and drop your dependents off of the plan, or you can leave your dependents on the plan as unsubsidized dependents, which their premiums would skyrocket to like $580 for the PPO or $749 for the HMO. So it makes most sense to stay on the plan together or decline coverage for your dependents and do the Medicare thing on your own. And if you're not eligible for free Part A, again, it's a very small percentage, then what you do is you purchase Part B. Anyone that's 65 and retired has to purchase Part B through Social Security. Everyone is eligible for Medicare Part B. It's purchased through Social Security. And then you would remain on the PPO or HMO plan, and PEB would become your supplement insurance. Again, if you're actively working, you do not need to enroll in Medicare. Towers Watson One Exchange is PEB's approved Medicare exchange vendor. So Towers Watson is not an insurance company. They are an umbrella company, a Medicare broker. They carry the insurance companies. They're associated with AARP, MetLife. They have Medigap plans. They have Medicare Advantage plans. They have licensed advisors that are basically going to take over your Medicare and supplement coverage once you turn 65, because you'll no longer have PEB, PPO, or HMO coverage once you turn 65 if you don't have any dependents on your plan. And you're not staying with PEB. So, by enrolling at Towers Watson One Exchange and Medicare, you do have the option to stay on PEB's dental coverage. That premium would come directly out of your PERS check if you receive one, and you just need to fill out a form for that, and we take care of the rest. The dental plan, those are the rates there. The dental insurance stays exactly the same as you have now. Your 4 cleanings a year, 2 exams, 2 bite wing x-rays, $100 deductible. So there's that. So you're retired, you have Medicare A and B in place, you have sent PEB a copy of your Medicare card and your benefit enrollment and change form to determine whether or not you want to stay on our dental plan. And then you contact Towers Watson One Exchange and you enroll in a Medicare supplement with one of their licensed advisors. They're going to do what's called a phone interview, and that takes about an hour to 2 hours. So you want to have all of your doctor's names ready, all of your medications that you take. Do you plan on traveling? They will ask all of those questions, plug it into their computer, and they will let you know what best fits your needs for your Medicare to supplement your Medicare coverage. Because again, Medicare A and B only covers 80%. So PEB wants you to purchase something to help assist with the 20% and a drug plan once you are Medicare eligible. The One Exchange process, you evaluate your plan options with the licensed advisor, you complete your enrollment, and then your HRA funding starts. The HRA funding takes about 8 to 12 weeks, and you guys are probably asking what HRA is. So an HRA is a health reimbursement arrangement. So based on your years of service, PEB will start to contribute a monthly amount to an HRA account over at Towers Watson One Exchange, which is different than if you're on the PPO with an HSA or HRA, the Visa debit card that you have with HealthScope. So those are 2 completely different accounts. That, again, takes about 8 to 12 weeks to get established, and HRA money is funded to the Towers Watson account monthly, and it does roll over. So we advise to use it on a monthly basis, but it will roll over. You pick your supplement with Towers Watson, yes. Yeah, I mean, they're going to enroll you in whatever works best for your needs. And then you'll start to get your HRA funding. Again, your consumer-driven health plan HRA is different than your One Exchange HRA. The PPO current HRA is on a Visa debit card. When you transition to Towers Watson One Exchange, it is no longer a Visa debit card. You have to submit paper claims or put your premiums like on automatic reimbursement. So say you choose an F plan and it's $100, you're going to pay that $100 to whatever carrier you've chosen, and then you can be reimbursed for that automatically, and you set all of that up through Towers Watson, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit further as well. You have to go through Towers Watson One Exchange in order to keep your PEB benefits with the state. Yeah. If you go outside of Towers Watson, you walk into your local AARP and sign up for a Medicare supplement, you are disqualified from all PEB coverage, your life insurance, your dental, your monthly HRA funding, everything will be terminated. So you have to make sure you're very careful. If you're currently retired and have an HRA account and you have money on that Visa debit card with HealthScope, that money will revert back to the state once you transition to Towers Watson. So you do have to make sure you contact HealthScope to see what amount of money is on that Visa debit card. Yes. The HSA is different. So the HSA money will stay on there forever. But if it's HRA, so you will have an HRA if you are enrolled in Medicare, if you have other coverage, or you're retired. So you want to contact HealthScope to make sure. And again, this is not the same for HMO participants. If you're on the HMO, then the HRA Visa debit will not apply to you. Yes, quick question. Yeah, again, the HSA will not revert back to the state. That will always be your money. But some people do not have an HSA, they have an HRA because they're not eligible for an HSA, and that money will revert back to the state once they transition. So it's best to call HealthScope and find out which account is what and what the amount of money that's in each account. The HRA at Towers Watson rolls over monthly. Yes, it does. But the Visa debit card does not. So it is, like I said, it's a very confusing process, and that's why you always want to contact PEB if you guys have any questions. We're kind of flying through this, and we do these presentations usually once every 3 months, and they're in way more detail, and they're, again, 2 hours or so, and I'm just kind of flying through this so that we don't run out of time. So this slide's important. Medicare Exchange HRA contribution eligibility. You must enroll and maintain your Medicare A and B as well as a medical plan through Towers Watson One Exchange. We did have a little old lady go to her doctor's office, and there was a Humana rep there, asked her how much she pays for her premiums. She said, oh, $100. She said, okay, well, sign up with me today, and I'll give you $20 off, so I'll make your premium $80. So she enrolled with Humana, she lost her $240 a month, she lost her life insurance, she lost her dental, she lost all of her benefits with PEB. So to save $20, she lost everything. So make sure if you have any questions, you always contact PEB or you contact Towers Watson, because it is, easy to get disenrolled, especially during Medicare open enrollment when you're getting a ton of mailings saying, sign in with us, save money. Don't talk to anyone. PEB and One Exchange. Yes. No, you have to enroll in Medicare A and B and sign up with Towers Watson One Exchange. You mean if you're already at Towers Watson One Exchange? Okay. Are you actively working? If you're actively working, no, you don't need to enroll in Medicare. You stay on the PPO or HMO. Yeah. Getting into the HRA funding. Your HRA is funded based on your years of service, starting with 5 years, going up to 20. So say you put 12 years in with the state, then your monthly HRA contribution at Towers Watson One Exchange is $144. Most of our retirees are 20 plus years, so they're getting $240 a month. And again, that goes into an account monthly to Towers Watson, and Towers Watson reimburses you. That HRA funding does take 8 to 12 weeks to get established. So if you've enrolled in Medicare and go to Towers Watson June 1st, don't expect to start seeing that $240 probably until like September or so. You always have to pay your carriers directly first and be reimbursed. So that $240 or whatever it is never pays the carriers directly for anything. So you always have to pay out of pocket first and then be reimbursed. It's a reimbursement arrangement. And Towers Watson takes that over. If you choose to use that $240 for medical services or dental work, glasses, then yes, you do need to provide receipts. If you set it up to where you have them pay for your premiums, normally that just happens automatically. So you pay your carriers let Towers Watson know that you've paid them, and then Towers Watson in turn reimburses you normally within 24 hours. Yeah. if your spouse is Medicare eligible, they can enroll at Towers Watson One Exchange as well. They won't be eligible to receive the funding, but they can come onto the PEB Dental. And if you're not using that $240 fully, then you can use that $240 on your spouse. Yeah. A health reimbursement arrangement account at Towers Watson. Correct, but we advise to use it because if something were to happen to you, that money reverts back to the state. It does not go to a spouse. It cannot be cashed out. You can't do anything with it. So we advise, it's a benefit for you. You put in your 15, 20 years, you want to use that money monthly. And a lot of people have zero monthly premiums for their health insurance. After that $240, they're paying nothing. So you just have to, follow the process, which can be very confusing, and let it start to happen. The reimbursements, again, 8 to 12 weeks. The funding packet from Towers Watson One Exchange will come in the mail, and that will explain on how to get your reimbursements, whether that be automatic or if you want to submit for single services or not. We're going to kind of fly through this reimbursement process because it's overwhelming enough to do the Medicare and the Towers Watson and then the funding on top of it. But Towers Watson will take over pretty much for all of your reimbursement stuff. We kind of went through automatic reimbursement already. There is a reoccurring claim form, so if you want like your Medicare Part B, if you're paying $134 to Social Security for your Part B, you can get that reimbursed. Or a manual claim, again, if it's a single service that you are only paying for once. Again, this is automatic reimbursement. You have to contact One Exchange to initiate that. Sometimes it can take a few months to get rolling. And you always have to pay your carriers directly first and then be reimbursed by Towers Watson. Forms and everything can be found. They used to be able to be found online. One Exchange is now barcoding their forms so that they are associated with the actual person, so you do have to call Towers Watson if you want any type of forms. PEB is no longer going to keep them either. We kind of went over this automatic reimbursement. You pay the carriers lets One Exchange know that you have paid them. One Exchange verifies that you have money, that PEB put money into your account, and then they reimburse you either a live check or a direct deposit. The safest, fastest way is to do direct deposit. I don't know how many of you guys get your neighbor's mail, but I do. And if I had a $240 check in the mail, I would like that. So direct deposit's fastest and easiest. Reoccurring premium reimbursement, again, if you want like your Medicare Part B premiums reimbursed, or if you have like a vision plan that you want and you know that that premium is the same throughout the entire year, then you would fill out a reoccurring premium reimbursement form. Towers Watson is there to advocate for this process, and they can walk you step by step on how to get this all done if it is overwhelming. You can call PEB and we can give you just basic information on it, but it's always best to call One Exchange after this. Again, funding takes 8 to 12 weeks. We have people call us all the time. They are effective May 1st. They call us on May 2nd. Where's my money? It takes a while to get established. But once it starts happening, it's very seamless, and we don't seem to have very many problems. We did that. Direct deposit form, you would have to attach a check one time for the direct deposit if you want it to go into a bank account. I don't know if Towers Watson is allowing this to be done by fax or mail anymore, online, and then the barcoded forms. So you'd have to double check with them. They just changed on June 5th, so that was just a few days ago. Your reimbursement claims can be submitted for up to 1 year. So say you do want to use that $240 to reimburse yourself for glasses and prescriptions throughout the year. You can save all of your receipts and then submit them to One Exchange at the end of the year instead of doing it month by month. And as long as the data service was within the past 12 months, then they will be able to reimburse you for that. And they do need receipts and claim forms and proof of payment if you submit it that way. Again, medical plan enrollment is required through One Exchange in order to receive your benefits. If you do not enroll through One Exchange, you will lose your life insurance, which is $12,500 for our retirees. Dental, if you're on the dental, and your HRA funding. Right now, retirees do have the option to come back one time during open enrollment, but they will never get their life insurance back. And that is subject to change year to year, depending on what rules and laws and legislation decides at that time. So If you are moving, you want to contact PEB, let us know your new address, contact Towers Watson, make sure that your plan will still cover you in the area you're moving to. If you receive letters saying, just check this box if you want to keep everything the same for next year and send it to us, don't do that. Call Towers Watson and ask them what you need to do, because last year we had about 50 people that just checked off their Humana plan saying, I want to keep everything the same. Humana disenrolled every single person from Towers Watson and re-enrolled them straight through Humana directly. So it disenrolled everybody, and it took, I think we're still actually dealing with that. So just make sure if you get anything to contact One Exchange or PEP, and we can definitely let you know, advise you on what's correct and what's not. Yes, this must be too good to be true. With that being said, Medicare does hold an open enrollment period. So if you are not happy with the plan that you're enrolled in, they have an open enrollment period where you can change your plans, and licensed advisors will, do the enrollment process again with you. Their open enrollment is different than PEB's open enrollment. So they do the end of the calendar year, October to December. Changes are effective January 1st. The only bad thing with that is they are not on PEB's open enrollment. So if you want to cancel or enroll in PEB dental coverage, you'd have to do that through PEB's open enrollment period, which is May, effective July. So if you ever have any questions, give us a call. We can let you know when it's okay to enroll or decline the dental. One Exchange, again, they are going to take over basically once you retire and you're 65. They're going to help you with claims, they're going to help you with providers, carrier questions, HRA funding, moving, dual residency. If you do decide you're going to move out of the country for any reason, contact PEB. We still will offer coverage to you, so you're able to do that as well. If you're moving out of Nevada for any reason once you retire, you are eligible for these benefits as well. You do not need to live in Nevada to receive these benefits. So, what was that? For vacations, well, depending on what plan you enroll in, you'd have to ask One Exchange. That's why they're going to ask you, do you plan on traveling? Because if you say, yeah, I plan on spending 6 months in Europe, they're not going to enroll you in a plan that's not going to give you any type of foreign travel coverage. And they do have plans that will cover you out of country. Towers Watson and One Exchange does have a website, so if you guys want to create a profile on their website and kind of play around and see what plans they have to offer and kind of prices, you can do that. This will also cut down on your phone call enrollment time. So like I said, that enrollment can sometimes on the phone take 2 hours or so. If you go online, create a profile, plug all of your medications in, plug in your doctors, when you call them, they'll be able to pull everything up, verify that everything's still there, and then the phone call is way faster. If you're not yet 65 and you want to go on and play around and see what plans the Towers Watson has to offer, just change your date of birth and make it seem like you're already 65. You can always get that changed, because if you go in there and say you're 63, they're going to say, we don't have any plans for you. You're not 65. So if you go on, just make sure that the profile looks like you're 65. Summary overview. Yeah, quick question. Yes. That would be, if you do end up moving, you can contact One Exchange and find out if your plan that you've enrolled, your supplement, will cover you for the doctors there. But yeah, Medicare, depending if you enroll in a Medigap plan. Yes, so if you enroll in an Advantage HMO and you move, you do need to call them to change your plan. And that is a qualifying event to switch supplement plans mid-year. Not necessarily. You can also call your doctor's office. Doctors can change their contracts at any time. I mean, the doctor you're seeing now can say, I no longer want to accept PEBS insurance, and I mean, they can change at any time. But normally during Medicare open enrollment, you will get stuff in the mail saying, nothing's changed on your plan. Okay. Okay. Well, nothing's ever guaranteed, but I mean, yeah, you would have to check with Towers Watson to find out if the new doctor that you're going to be seeing in your area accepts the plan that you've chosen. Yes, so if you get something in the mail during Medicare open enrollment and says, check off here if you don't want to change your plan or do anything, then you need to contact Towers Watson to make sure that that's legit, and that if you do that, that your plan will not change. So it doesn't happen often. Like I said, it happened to about 50 people last year. I mean, that's still a lot, but it's 50 people that shouldn't have, but. Yes, yes. Yeah, if you get stuff straight from the carrier, it says AARP on it, it does not have PEB's logo or Towers Watson's logo anywhere on it, definitely contact Towers Watson to find out what's going on. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Towers Watson does have Advantage plans, which are like the PPO and HMO plans, and then they also have Medigap plans, which are those lettered plans. And that's what the license advisor is going to go over with you and discuss what options are going to be best for you at that time. And then once you do transition to one exchange, you no longer are on PEBS, PPO, or HMO. That premium is going to stop, and then you can stay on the dental. Mm-hmm. Yeah, contact One Exchange and find out. Yeah, if that's okay. And this is all for retirees. So if you're actively working, you do not need to do any of this. Did you have a question? If you Correct. So once you turn 65, if you're eligible for Medicare A and B, you do not have any other dependents on the plan with you, your option is to go to One Exchange and keep your PEB-sponsored benefits, you know, your life insurance, HRA funding, dental, or cancel all benefits with us and choose something on your own. One Exchange is a huge Medicare exchange, and they offer stuff, or plans that are less expensive than if you were to go try to find it out on your own. And they are a great benefit to the state to be able to weed your way through all those plans. If you take all the mail that you're receiving about signing up for Medicare Advantage and Medigap plans, if you spread that all out, there's hundreds of different options. So they're going to advocate for you and figure out what's best for you. But yeah, you can either decline all benefits or you have to go through One Exchange. And again, One Exchange is not an insurance company. They're just the broker, the umbrella company. So the quick overview, you're going to contact Social Security once you're retired, find out what your eligibility is for Medicare A and B, get that enrollment done, send PEB a copy of your Medicare card, send PEB a copy of the retiree benefit enrollment and change form. That's going to be in the packet that gets mailed to you. And that will determine whether or not you want to enroll or decline in your dental coverage, complete enrollment with One Exchange, and then wait for your funding packet. So I know the process can seem very overwhelming, but if you take it step by step, you'll definitely get through it. It may take a little bit of effort, but you'll get through it. Yes. We do, yes. And actually not this exact same presentation, but one very similar, Carson City, our Carson City office has just started doing them, and they're held every single Tuesday in the 901 South Stewart address location. And we alternate 10 a.m. meetings and then 2 p.m. meetings every other Tuesday. If you look on our website, you can find the whatever time it is, or just call us and say what time is the Tuesday meeting this week, and it's held right in our boardroom. And then we do like I said, every 3 months we'll hold a more in-depth Towers Watson meeting, and then Towers Watson is actually at those more in-depth meetings as well, and they go into a lot of detail about that HRA funding process. So next Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the Carson City boardroom will be the Aging into Medicare presentation. And the presentation is actually available online as well. If you want to go through it at your own pace, you can do that as well. And then that's just our contact information. If you email the member service email, that's me. So I'm doing emails and walk-ins, so I do see a few familiar faces in here. That's Towers Watson's phone number and website, and then Social Security to get your Medicare going. And we'll be here to answer questions. The flow charts are there as well. Did anyone have any quick questions now? Yes. Probably about 3 to 6 months prior. Yes, because again, it took me probably about 3 or 4 months to grasp this entire process and be able to answer any question and, go over it in detail. So if we can have like a 14-minute conversation and you guys can kind of get the idea, then we've made success. So if you get anything away from it, just sign up with Towers Watson One Exchange. Do not enroll in any Medicare supplements outside of Towers Watson. Did anybody else have any other questions? No, we're good? Okay. That was way good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Sorry,
you so
it was
much.
rushed.
Thank you so much. All right, so the last thing I wanted to do was just introduce Miss Janelle. Janelle, where are you at? There you are. What's your last name again? Davis, that's right. I'm sorry. Miss Janelle Davis. She's from HealthLink, and she has a little short presentation for you, about 5-6 minutes maybe, that's all. And she wants to talk to you a little bit about what their agency offers and some of the resources that you can tap into for you or your family or friends or that might need health insurance or might need to know a little bit more how to attain good, affordable health insurance. So I'm going to
Thanks. This will be really quick. And I just want to say, well, thanks, Rob, for having us. I know that most of you are state employees looking to enroll onto Medicare and are either retired or about to retire or close to that. But I just want you to know that as a fellow, yes, that one. I just want to let you know, as another fellow state employee and state agency, the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange is just another resource for you as an affordable healthcare option, mostly for also you or perhaps maybe your family, your kids, or their kids. So it's just another option. So first, kind of who we are, what we do. First of all, I'm Janelle. I'm the communications officer at the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange, so another state agency. But we're also known as Nevada HealthLink, and we began operations in 2013. We're codified into NRS. But we're a state agency. We're not Medicaid, and we're not Medicare, and we're not Medi-Cal. So we are the state-based exchange, so the state-based marketplace using the federal platform, so healthcare.gov. We operate the online marketplace, and that is known as Nevada HealthLink. So that's where the exchange facilitates the sale of plans. So basically you can hop on to Nevada HealthLink, you can see what you're eligible for. These are all income-based plans. You can take a pre-screener, which either determines your eligibility for a HealthLink plan or for Medicaid. So it will bring you over to either DWIS, so the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, or to an exchange plan through healthcare.gov. Sorry, how do I just hit the arrow, Rob? The play? Oh. Sorry, first time.
forward, backwards,
Got it, okay.
little pointer if you want it.
Oh,
You
thanks.
want to beam people or whatever.
So who benefits from Nevada HealthLink? We kind of talked about this. It's a really wide range of folks, but again, these are all income-based plans, and it all depends on your eligibility. So if you're eligible for these plans, families, millennials, individuals, the rural Nevada, tribes, self-employed, so people who don't, so not you guys, so people who currently don't have access to a health insurance plan because possibly they are a real estate agent or a hairdresser, and we know a lot of people within Nevada who have these, who may be eligible for these plans. So again, you can see 50 plus, so not eligible for Medicare. And actually an interesting fact, last year in our 2016 open enrollment, we found from our CMS data that 26% of exchange enrollees, which our total enrollees are over 89,000, are between the ages of 55 to 64. So it is somehow a popular option and a resource for you. So what are the benefits of using Nevada HealthLink? We are state sanctioned. You can choose from a variety of affordable plans certified by the state. we work with brokers, navigators, and agents to help you go through this process, and you can find all of that information on our website, nevadahealthlink.com. Again, peace of mind knowing you're buying from a local, authentic marketplace. And just, I heard a lot of, through the PEB presentation, one exchange. That's not us, so don't get us confused. We are Nevada HealthLink, which is the online marketplace facilitated by the Nevada Exchange. So kind of confusing, but very separate, different things. Sure, sure. Right, so you all have, you know, you're a state employee, so you have these benefits through PEB. But for a lot of Nevadans who don't have access to that, this is an option for them. Yes, I saw you yesterday. Yes, all the time.
I don't know what the deal is. People call DeferCom for asking for accountants, health insurance. I mean, I feel more questions from other agencies.
Yes, well, you're not alone, Rob. We get questions all about Medicaid, and I'm like, why don't you call Medicaid? But anyways, so no one can be denied coverage because of a pre-existing condition, and that's all through the Affordable Care Act, and so hence kind of why we have a state-based exchange in Nevada. So these are just other perks. Also, you can get free assistance from licensed enrollment professionals, and you can find that in-person assistance through our website. You can put in your zip code and guide, you know, your family member, whoever may be eligible for these plans, to get free in-person assistance with a licensed broker or navigator within the state. We have multiple people throughout the state to help because, again, insurance is confusing, as we all know. So for just a couple quick tips, if you qualify for a life event, obviously open enrollment for the exchange is not right now. So new this year, open enrollment will begin November 1st and go all the way through December 15th, but it's actually cut in half this year, unfortunately, so you only have 45 days to enroll in a qualified health plan through the exchange. But if you do qualify for a life event such as having a child, getting married, or an income change, you may be eligible to enroll throughout the entire year. So if you're thinking of someone right now in your head, of someone you know who may be eligible for these, you know, have them call us, because we just need to see if they're eligible now instead of waiting until November 1st, and then they'll get coverage by January 1st for the rest of the year. You can access updates and information on our blog and at nevadahealthlink.com. We have a call center actually, and it's not just an automated system, so someone will actually pick up and answer the phone when you call us, which is nice, and that number is up on the screen for you, 855-768-5465. And we also work closely with the federal marketplace, so healthcare.gov, and so we can connect you to them as well. Oh yeah, 855-768-5465. And I also I brought some educational literature on the back table, so you can pick that up on your way out as well. And then my contact information is also up here as a fellow state employee, so feel free to call me if you have any other questions. And yeah, it's just been a whirlwind of fun stuff at the exchange with federal healthcare policy going on, so it's a busy time for us.
I don't envy her at all. I gotta just tell you, I've been in the health insurance business for the last 20 years, and I just can't even imagine breaking my teeth back in the health insurance business anymore. It would just be horrible.
Well,
so I envy you. I mean, I don't envy
don't
you.
envy me, yeah, don't envy me.
So anyway, Janelle's here for you guys. This is a point in the program where, if those of you that are left, if you have questions, we are gonna stick around. So we have the folks from Voya, Joanne D'Angelo, can raise her hand real quick, and Diana Patani are here to talk to you about, answer any questions about your Voya account, or if you want to make appointments with them. Our friend from Morningstar stuck around, so Paul is here out in the lobby, and he'll be in here. I'll stick around. Our folks from Public Employee Benefits will be here as well. And the last thing I'll ask is that if you could just look around you where you're sitting. I don't want to have to get in trouble by the governor for leaving his room a mess, so if you can pick up anything around you and put it on the back table or throw it in the garbage, that would be great. Thank you all. Yeah, just one time, just sign in one time, will be good, and as long as everybody signs in. Hopefully you guys all found this beneficial.